In this video, we're going to be breaking down the darkest episodes on Cartoon Network. First up, we got a regular epic final battle, Regular Show. The final episode of Regular Show shows Pops making the ultimate sacrifice to save the universe from his evil brother Anti-Pops. This episode deals with permanent death and loss in a way that was unprecedented for Cartoon Network at the time. Contextual overview. The episode begins with Pops having a nightmare where Anti-Pops in Titan form destroys parts of the park. In his dream, Pops catches what appears to be a dragonfly, but discovers it's a 2B pencil before Anti-Pops' giant hand grabs him. Pops wakes up screaming, and Mordecai and Rigby rush in to check on him. The gang travels to Lollyland, Pops' home planet, which is in ruins. They meet the native residents, Frivolacronus, Quadravicronus, and Weird Mushroom Guy, who explain the planet's damaged state. Build up. The Guardian of Lollyland reveals that she has never seen a battle between the brothers end in victory. Every fight has ended in mutually assured destruction, followed by a reset of the universe. The ancient tapestries show this pattern has repeated for billions of years, with each battle ending when two fists collide. Mordecai suggests setting traps to catch Anti-Pops off guard. Pops initially objects because he believes a sneak attack would be dishonorable, but eventually agrees to try changing their approach. Meanwhile, Anti-Pops faces delays getting to Lollyland. He erases half his ship's engine in anger, then crashes his smaller ship into a space deer. Main event. The gang sets up traps in the Colosseum. When Anti-Pops arrives and steps into their tripwire, he gets hit with spiked plates, flaming arrows, catapult rocks, missiles, dome lasers, and a train. Everyone celebrates, but Anti-Pops emerges unharmed, saying it tickled. Anti-Pops proposes a one-on-one fight with specific terms. During their battle, Pops manages to knock Anti-Pops down, apparently winning. However, Anti-Pops immediately breaks his word and orders his army to attack. The battle escalates when Anti-Pops transforms into his Titan form and begins erasing parts of Lollyland with his beam. He erases the Lollyland natives and the Guardian. Pops transforms into his own Titan form to fight back, but Anti-Pops continues erasing everything until only Mordecai, Rigby, and Pops remain. When the brothers prepare to collide their fists, Mordecai realizes this will reset the universe and tries to stop it by flying between them. Their eject button malfunctions, and they get caught in the collision, causing the universe to reset. Immediate aftermath. The episode restarts exactly like the first Regular Show episode, with Mordecai and Rigby fighting over a doll. Rigby experiences déjà vu and remembers past events. He demonstrates this by digging up a Blu-ray box set that contains their future story. When Mordecai touches it, he regains his memories too. They discover their friends don't exist in this reset timeline and use the power to escape back to the proper universe where the battle continues. Long-term repercussions. Back in the battle, reality begins breaking down. Pops gets knocked back to The Naive Man from Lollyland student film before returning to the cosmic battle. The environment becomes chaotic with giant letters and visual distortions. Pops realizes that violence won't work and decides to try something different. Instead of fighting, he flies toward Anti-Pops with open arms to hug him. This act of love causes Anti-Pops to shrink back to normal size. Anti-Pops warns that he'll blast Pops the moment he lets go, but Pops says he won't let go. As they float toward the sun, Pops telepathically tells Mordecai and Rigby goodbye, saying this is a happy ending. Anti-Pops finally feels remorse for his actions, and the brothers make peace before flying into the sun together. Both brothers die, but this sacrifice breaks the cycle and revives everyone Anti-Pops had erased. The episode then shows a 25-year time jump where all the characters have grown up and built new lives. Mordecai becomes an artist and meets Steph, while Rigby marries Eileen and has children. A memorial statue honors Pops. The final scene reveals the entire series was playing on a TV in an afterlife setting, with Pops' voice saying, "Jolly good show," as the credits roll, showing he's watching over his friends from beyond death. This ending represents one of the most serious and permanent consequences ever shown in a Cartoon Network series, where a beloved main character truly dies to save everyone else. A regular epic final battle stands as Regular Show's darkest episode, where Pops sacrifices his life to save the universe from his evil brother Anti-Pops. After failed attempts to break an eternal cycle of cosmic battles that always end in universal destruction, Pops realizes violence won't work. Instead, he chooses love, hugging Anti-Pops as they fly into the sun together, permanently ending the cycle but dying in the process. The episode jumps forward 25 years, showing the characters grown up with families, while Pops watches over them from an afterlife. This marked one of the most serious permanent deaths in Cartoon Network history, where a beloved main character truly dies to save everyone else. Moving on to Skips' story, Regular Show. This episode reveals the tragic backstory of how Skips gained his immortality through love and loss. When his girlfriend Mona dies protecting him during a high school fight with an immortal bully, Skips chooses eternal life to honor her memory and eventually face the threat again. Contextual overview. The episode begins with Mordecai, Rigby, and Skips working on the roof together, singing a roofing song. During lunch break, Skips tosses sandwiches to his friends. When Rigby fails to catch his burrito and it splatters on the ground, he jokes that if he was immortal like Skips, he would have caught it. This leads to questions about Skips's immortality. They ask if he could survive in space or other dangerous situations. When Skips explains that being immortal doesn't mean he doesn't need to breathe, Rigby asks how he became immortal in the first place. Skips initially resists telling the story, but after Mordecai and Rigby keep asking, he agrees to explain. Build up. Skips begins his story by taking them back to Bennett High School, where he was known as Walks. Young Walks sits in Headmaster Bennett's office, having been expelled from 3 schools that year for fighting. The headmaster warns that one fight at his school means expulsion, making this Walks' last chance to graduate. Gareth, young Gary, shows Walks around the school, pointing out different groups including the Immortal Student Council, which consists of the 5 future Guardians of Eternal Youth. Their tour gets interrupted when Clordbane the Destroyer appears, bullying Reginald and the other council members. When Walks tells Clordbane to leave them alone, it creates the first confrontation. Clordbane pushes Walks twice, leading to both grabbing each other's throats before Headmaster Bennett breaks it up. Clordbane warns that this isn't over, while Reginald notes that nobody has ever stood up to Clordbane before. Main event. During lunch, Walks meets Mona, Desdemona, who invites him to sit with her. They begin talking and connecting, with Walks spitting out the terrible school soup and Mona explaining that nobody eats cafeteria food if they can avoid it. The Immortal Student Council approaches with a proposition. They want Walks to fight Clordbane. They explain that Clordbane was created immortal and cannot be defeated by a regular person. They show him their design for the Fists of Justice, a weapon that could give a mortal the power to defeat an immortal. When Walks turns back to Mona, she has left, only leaving her half-eaten apple. He chases after her and discovers she heard about the fight plans. Mona explains she doesn't like men who fight. Walks tries to convince her he doesn't really fight, and she suggests he could help with prom decorations if he wants to get to know her. While working on prom committee, Mona teaches Walks how to properly hammer nails. They share a romantic moment until Clordbane appears and challenges Walks to fight. However, Walks refuses, saying Clordbane isn't worth it. When Clordbane calls him a coward, Walks walks away with Mona, who praises his choice to use words instead of violence. Immediate aftermath. Walks asks Mona out and she agrees. Their relationship develops through a montage showing them dating, working on decorations, and growing closer. Walks gives Mona a heart-shaped locket with their pictures, revealing he tricked her about a bee to take her photograph. She loves the gift and agrees to go to prom with him. The fight gets scheduled for Saturday at 8 p.m. too, the same time as prom. Gareth suggests Walks can excuse himself during prom to fight and return. On prom night, Walks picks up Mona and they attend the Enchantment Under the Sea themed prom. As 8 approaches, Walks becomes nervous, making excuses about needing the bathroom. Long-term repercussions. Clordbane grows impatient and bursts into the prom, confronting Walks in front of everyone and destroying decorations. When Clordbane shoves Headmaster Bennett and declares the school belongs to him, Mona sadly nods at Walks, giving him permission to fight. The battle begins with Walks punching Clordbane, but his regular fists have no effect on the immortal bully. Clordbane dominates until he pulls out a black spike weapon. During the fight, when Clordbane aims his spike at Walks, Mona pushes Walks out of the way. The spike hits the wall, cracking the ceiling, and debris falls from above, crushing and killing Mona. Gareth delivers the Fists of Justice to Walks, who grabs them in rage and grief. The magical weapons give him the power to defeat Clordbane, and he delivers a final punch that sends the bully flying into the stratosphere. In the aftermath, Reginald finds Mona's locket in the debris and shakes his head sadly. She's dead. Years later, adult Walks meets with the Guardians of Eternal Youth. They explain that Clordbane's orbit will return him to Earth in 157 years, and they ask Walks to become immortal to fight him again. When warned that immortality means outliving loved ones, Walks responds that he's already lost the one he loved. They ask him to choose a new name, and after remembering all the times he and Mona skipped together, he chooses Skips. The Guardians grant him immortality, and Skips explains that he'll skip until the end of eternity as his way of staying close to Mona's memory. The story ends with present-day Skips pulling out Mona's locket and looking at their pictures before continuing his work on the roof. This episode reveals the deep sadness underlying Skips' character. His immortality came at the cost of losing his only love, and his constant skipping serves as a permanent reminder of their relationship. Skips' story reveals the heartbreaking origin of Skips' immortality through his tragic high school romance. Originally named Walks, he was a troublemaker who fell in love with Mona while attending Bennett High School. When the immortal bully Clorgbane the Destroyer challenged Walks to a fight during prom night, Mona pushed Walks out of the way of Clorgbane's weapon, but falling ceiling debris crushed and killed her. Devastated by grief, Walks used the Fists of Justice to defeat Clorgbane, sending him into orbit. Years later, the Guardians of Eternal Youth offered Walks immortality to face Clorgbane when he returns to Earth in 157 years. Walks accepted and renamed himself Skips in Mona's memory, choosing to skip for eternity as their way of staying connected. The episode explains why Skips carries such wisdom and sadness. He's lived with the loss of his only love for centuries. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Terror Tales of the Park 2 regular show. This Halloween anthology episode features 3 horror stories told by different park characters, each getting progressively darker and more violent. The episode showcases disturbing themes of supernatural revenge, death, and transformation that push the boundaries of what was acceptable on Cartoon Network at the time. The episode takes place during a Halloween storytelling session in the park house, with the main characters sharing scary tales. Pops tells the first story about his childhood doll, Percy, while cleaning his room with Mordecai and Rigby's help. When Pops shows them the creepy doll, Percy says disturbing phrases like, "I'm gonna draw on your face," when his string is pulled. Despite Percy's unsettling behavior, Pops finds the doll amusing and laughs at his threats. Mordecai and Rigby are immediately disturbed and tell Pops he needs to get rid of the doll because grown men playing with dolls is not cool. Pops reluctantly agrees to throw Percy away. The next day, Pops appears with his face completely drawn on with marker. When asked what happened, Pops explains that Percy drew on his face during their playdate. He insists Percy did it, not himself. When reminded he was supposed to throw the doll away, Pops admits he tried, but it did not work. Mordecai and Rigby throw Percy in the trash themselves. Later that evening, while playing video games, they hear strange noises from upstairs. They find Pops' door locked and look through the peephole to see Percy alive and threatening Pops during a tea party. Percy flips the tea table and demands to draw on Pops' face while holding a black marker. The doll has returned from the trash and gained the ability to move and speak independently. Mordecai and Rigby break down the door to rescue Pops. Percy immediately tries to draw on Rigby's face before Mordecai knocks him away with a bat. The doll threatens that they are all going to get drawn on before leaving. The climactic moment comes when Percy returns and demands Pops bring him a marker. Pops finally stands up to Percy, repeatedly saying no, and declaring that having dolls is not cool for grown men. When Percy continues demanding the marker, Pops kicks the doll, sending him into a fire. Percy emerges from the flames still alive and attacks the group. The story ends with Mordecai observing that they told Pops dolls are not cool. Immediate aftermath. After Pops finishes his story, Mordecai admits it was kinda scary, while Muscle Man dismisses it as lame and walks out with High Five Ghost. This sets up Muscle Man telling his own story to prove he can do better. Muscle Man's story begins when he and High Five Ghost find an abandoned RV in the fog and decide to crash it into their local crash pit. When they start the RV, supernatural events occur, windshield wipers activate by themselves, the radio tunes itself, and green fog emerges from air vents. The fog transforms into the ghosts of Skull Punch, a dead band who owned the RV. The band members are furious that Muscle Man wants to destroy their final resting place. They take control of the RV and drive toward the crash pit with Muscle Man and High Five Ghost trapped inside. Muscle Man tricks them into performing their terrible song Devastation Nation first, then throws a cinder block onto the gas pedal, sending the RV into the pit. The crash kills everyone, but Muscle Man and High Five Ghost float up as ghosts, with Muscle Man declaring it the best crash pit ever. Long-term repercussions. Rigby tells the final story about trick-or-treating with Mordecai using fake children to get extra candy. When this fails, Rigby eggs a house despite warnings from Mordecai and a police officer. The house belongs to a Halloween wizard who emerges and rips off a piece of Rigby's fur while declaring he will pay. Back at the park, Rigby begins transforming into an actual house, complete with door, windows, and chimney. The transformation is gradual and horrifying, with Rigby unable to remove the house parts appearing on his body. The Halloween wizard calls House Rigby and taunts him, promising worse things are coming. When Benson tries to intervene during the phone call, the wizard's arms emerge from the phone and strangle him. The wizard then arrives and systematically kills each character in cartoonishly gruesome ways. Muscle Man is skinned alive and says, "I told you I was ripped," before dying. High Five Ghost is liquefied through the phone and says, "Worst phone call ever." Mordecai is decapitated and comments about being as tall as Rigby. Skips is burned in the chimney, Benson is flushed down the toilet with his nunchucks, and Pops disappears into a closet. The final confrontation reveals that all this horror was just so the wizard could egg Rigby in return. However, the wizard then drops a giant egg that drowns House Rigby, completing his disproportionate revenge. The episode ends with Rigby transforming into the Halloween wizard himself and addressing the audience directly, saying "Happy Halloween" as the screen goes black. This represents some of the darkest content Regular Show ever produced, showing how supernatural revenge can completely consume and transform its victims. Terror Tales of the Park 2 presents 3 increasingly dark horror stories that pushed Cartoon Network's boundaries. Pops tells about his creepy doll Percy, who comes alive and obsessively tries to draw on everyone's faces until Pops finally stands up to him. Muscle Man's tale involves crashing a haunted RV owned by the ghost band Skull Punch, resulting in everyone dying but calling it the best crash pit ever. Rigby's story escalates to extreme horror when a Halloween wizard curses him for egging a house, transforming Rigby into an actual house while systematically killing the other park workers in cartoonishly gruesome ways, skinning Muscle Man, liquefying High Five Ghost, decapitating Mordecai, burning Skips, and flushing Benson down a toilet. The wizard's ultimate revenge is simply egging Rigby back before drowning him with a giant egg. The episode ends with Rigby transforming into the Halloween wizard himself, saying "Happy Halloween" directly to the audience. Moving on to I Remember You, Adventure Time. I Remember You, Adventure Time's most heartbreaking episode. This episode reveals the tragic backstory between Ice King and Marceline, showing that Ice King was once Simon Petrikov, a human who cared for young Marceline after the apocalypse, but lost his memory and humanity due to his magical crown. The episode deals with themes of mental illness, memory loss, and the pain of watching someone you love forget who they are. Contextual overview. The episode begins with Ice King in his lair, wearing a Marceline wig and singing her songs to his penguin Gunter. Ice King admires Marceline's musical talent and decides he wants to collaborate with her to write a song that will help him attract princesses. He believes that having a tortured past will make him more appealing, though he admits he cannot really remember his own history. Ice King goes to his past room, which contains various items from his forgotten life, and takes his scrapbook for lyrical inspiration. The scrapbook is described as still being wet with tears, showing the emotional weight of these forgotten memories. Meanwhile, Finn and Jake spot Ice King flying to Marceline's cave and assume he is up to trouble, following him to intervene. When Ice King arrives at Marceline's cave, she immediately tells him to leave, saying she told him not to come around her anymore. Ice King asks for help writing a song to get princess action, which Marceline refuses. He suggests they could be a prog rock duo where he gets the princesses and she gets whatever it is you're into. Build up. Ice King flies into Marceline's house uninvited, and when she demands he leave, he asks to play what he has written so far. However, his equipment becomes tangled in cords from flying with it, and he ends up trapped on the ground. This creates an awkward moment where Marceline just stares at him struggling. Finn and Jake burst in expecting to arrest Ice King, but Marceline surprisingly tells them he can stay because they are working on a song together. This confuses everyone, including Ice King himself. After Finn and Jake leave reluctantly, Marceline agrees to help with the song, and Ice King gives her pages from his scrapbook for inspiration. The pages are tear-stained, showing they contain deeply emotional content, though Ice King seems unaware of their significance. Marceline begins playing the omnichord, while Ice King starts singing about various princesses, including Princess Bubblegum, in an increasingly desperate and unhinged manner. Main event. Ice King's song becomes progressively more desperate and pathetic as he sings about being alone and needing someone to love him. He starts shooting ice beams everywhere while crying and begging for love, asking "What's wrong with me?" and demanding that princesses love him. His behavior becomes so erratic that Marceline forces him to stop. When Marceline tells him to stop acting crazy, Ice King pushes her away forcefully, then immediately apologizes and retreats to sit on top of the refrigerator in shame. This moment shows both his instability and his awareness that his behavior is inappropriate. Marceline sits by the refrigerator and begins singing her own song about how annoying Ice King is, but admits she is actually glad to see him and wonders if she is the one who is nuts. When Ice King asks if she likes him, Marceline confirms she does and calls him "You old jerk." Ice King asks for a hug, which Marceline gives him, though she appears bittersweet about it. When Ice King tries to kiss her, she reacts with disgust and calls him Simon, asking why he does not remember anything. Immediate aftermath. When Marceline calls him Simon, Ice King responds with confusion, saying, "What, mon?" This reveals that he has completely forgotten his human identity. Marceline becomes frustrated, asking why he comes to see her when he does not remember her and does not even know who he island. Ice King insists he knows who he is, a lyricist, and starts pulling out various papers covered in writing, including receipts, takeout menus, and newspapers. His desperate attempt to prove his identity through these random scribblings shows how disconnected he is from reality. A photo falls into Marceline's hands, showing Simon Petrikov as a human delivering the Enchiridion to a museum before the war. When she shows it to Ice King, he cannot understand what he is looking at. Marceline then finds a picture of herself as a child and reads the message written on the back. Long-term repercussions. Marceline begins singing the message Simon wrote on the photo. Marceline, is it just you and me in the wreckage of the world? That must be so confusing for a little girl. And I know you're going to need me here with you, but I'm losing myself, and I'm afraid you're going to lose me too. Ice King encourages her to keep singing, treating it like just another song rather than understanding its personal significance. Marceline continues reading more messages. This magic keeps me alive, but it's making me crazy, and I need to save you, but who's going to save me? Please forgive me for whatever I do when I don't remember you. When Ice King says, I wrote that, hot stuff. Without understanding what it means, Marceline becomes devastated, asking how he cannot remember. She shows him another photo, and Ice King begins singing another message. Marceline, I can feel myself slipping away. I can't remember what it made me say, but I remember that I saw you frown. I swear, it wasn't me, it was the crown. The song becomes a duet as they sing together. This magic keeps me alive, but it's making me crazy, and I want to save you, but who's going to save me? Please forgive me for whatever I do when I don't remember you. Marceline begins crying as she realizes Ice King truly does not remember their relationship or what the messages mean. The episode ends with a flashback to after the apocalypse, showing young Marceline crying in the ruins. Simon Petrikov returns to comfort her, wiping her tears and giving her a teddy bear from a ruined store. The flashback shows the caring relationship they once had before the crown's magic consumed Simon's mind and humanity. This episode represents one of Adventure Time's most emotionally mature storylines, dealing with the real-world horror of watching someone suffer from memory loss and mental deterioration. The tragedy lies not just in Simon's transformation, but in Marceline's ongoing pain of being forgotten by someone who once cared for her deeply. The crown serves as a metaphor for mental illness and how it can destroy relationships while the affected person remains unaware of what they have lost. I Remember You reveals the heartbreaking relationship between Ice King and Marceline. Ice King visits Marceline wanting to collaborate on a song to attract princesses, but doesn't remember their shared past. When Marceline calls him Simon, it's revealed that Ice King was once Simon Petrikov, a human who cared for young Marceline after the apocalypse. Through tear-stained notes in his scrapbook, they sing messages Simon wrote as he was losing his humanity to the crown's magic. Marceline, is it just you and me in the wreckage of the world? That must be so confusing for a little girl. I'm losing myself, and I'm afraid you're going to lose me too. The crown kept him alive but made him crazy, and he begged forgiveness for whatever he might do when I don't remember you. Ice King treats these deeply personal messages as just song lyrics, having no memory of what they mean. The episode ends with a flashback showing Simon comforting child Marceline in the post-apocalyptic ruins, demonstrating the caring relationship destroyed by the crown's curse. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Mortal Recoil, Adventure Time. This episode shows Princess Bubblegum becoming possessed by the Lich after falling into a well, transforming her into a demonic monster that threatens the Candy Kingdom. The story deals with themes of corruption, loss of innocence, and the horror of watching someone you care about become something evil and unrecognizable. The episode begins at the Candy Hospital where Princess Bubblegum is brought in after an accident. Doctor. Ice Cream reports that she is totally gross over 90% of her body, with the remaining 10% crazy nasty. The medical team treats her with sugar, and she appears to stabilize and return to normal, though she looks drained and needs rest. Ice King is present at the hospital, crying over Princess Bubblegum and calling her his wife. When everyone calls him old, Ice King becomes upset, saying he did not realize he was old and that nobody wants to see his old skin. He leaves sadly while Finn angrily tells him to get out. After Princess Bubblegum says she needs rest, Finn and Jake take her back to her bedroom in the castle. They fill the room with flowers they picked from throughout the Candy Kingdom to cheer her up. However, Princess Bubblegum begins displaying strange behavior that suggests something is seriously wrong. Build up. In her bedroom, Princess Bubblegum starts making strange guttural noises and bending her body in unnatural ways. When Jake expresses concern about her weird behavior, Finn insists they need to take care of her and not make her feel bad about her condition from the accident. Princess Bubblegum disappears from her bed and goes to the bathroom. When Finn brings her back to bed, he confesses that the sweater she made him kept him safe and saved his life. He thanks her for imbuing this sweater with the power of liking someone a lot, because he likes her a lot. When Peppermint Butler enters with Jake bringing tea, he sees Princess Bubblegum talking to Finn and immediately drops the tea, gasps, and hisses like a cat before running away on all fours. This reaction suggests that Peppermint Butler, who is sensitive to dark magic, recognizes something evil about Princess Bubblegum's current state. Princess Bubblegum asks Finn to get her some things, and he leaves to gather what she requested. Jake is left alone with her and tries to cheer her up by singing, but she becomes visibly annoyed. Her voice becomes deeper and more threatening as her behavior escalates. Main event. During Jake's song, Princess Bubblegum puts her hand in a flower bush and wilts every single flower in the room instantly. This demonstrates supernatural powers that she never had before. She then convulses and yells gibberish while her bed begins jumping up and down. Suddenly, demonic flames engulf the entire room. When Princess Bubblegum touches Jake while appearing to melt, he screams in terror and flees, shouting, "Oh, my glob," repeatedly. Jake theorizes that toxic waste affected her brain and gave her demon powers. Finn returns with the items Princess Bubblegum requested, which include bleach, lighter fluid, ammonia, gasoline, and plutonium, all dangerous chemicals that he dismisses as lady stuff. When Princess Bubblegum takes these items back to the bathroom, Jake tries to warn Finn that her bed was on fire and that she made it happen with her brain. Jake forces Finn to look through the bathroom keyhole, where they see that Princess Bubblegum's skin has turned black and her shape has changed dramatically. She is drinking the dangerous chemicals from the bathtub, growing larger and more monstrous with each gulp. When Finn breaks down the door to stop her, Princess Bubblegum picks up the entire bathtub and drinks from it deeply. She then throws it down, knocking Finn and Jake through a wall, and smashes her way out of the castle as a giant black monster. Immediate aftermath. Ice King reveals he has been watching, and explains that Princess Bubblegum is possessed by the Lich. He claims he saw something come out of the Lich and go into Princess Bubblegum when she fell into the well, though he wasn't sure if it was real because his stanky old wizard eyes sometimes show him things that aren't there. Despite Ice King's offer to help, Finn refuses to let him assist and instead tries to free Princess Bubblegum using the power of his like sweater. Finn propels himself toward the monster, declaring, "I like you, princess." But she punches him and sends him flying back to the castle. When Finn's attempt to cure her with love fails completely, he reluctantly asks Ice King for help. Ice King eagerly agrees, and they work together with Finn, distracting the monster while Ice King freezes her legs. They manage to freeze the entire creature, but when she topples over, Princess Bubblegum's body completely shatters into pieces. Long-term repercussions. The shattered pieces of Princess Bubblegum are rushed back to the hospital, where the medical team attempts to reassemble her. Dr. Ice Cream and the other doctors work to connect the pieces, but they discover there is not enough material to restore her to her original form. Nurse Poundcake announces that while Princess Bubblegum survived, there were complications due to insufficient gum to work with. Princess Bubblegum emerges from the emergency room, but she is now physically 13 years old, the same age as Finn. Ice King leaves immediately upon learning she is now 13, saying, "Ah, dang it. Well, I'm out of here." His departure shows that his romantic interest was based on her being an adult, and he has no interest in pursuing someone who is now a child. Finn realizes that Princess Bubblegum is now the same age as him, and she approaches him asking for a hug and calling him hero. They embrace while everyone cheers, and Finn blushes at this new dynamic between them. However, the episode ends with an ominous revelation as the camera pans past the celebrating crowd to show a snail waving at the viewer. The snail's eyes glow with the same evil energy as the Lich, indicating that the Lich's spirit has now possessed this creature instead of being destroyed. This ending suggests that the threat is far from over and that the Lich continues to exist in a different form. The episode deals with themes of corruption, possession, and the loss of innocence in both literal and metaphorical ways. Princess Bubblegum's transformation into a younger version of herself represents a kind of rebirth, but the presence of the possessed snail indicates that evil continues to lurk in their world. The episode also explores Finn's feelings for Princess Bubblegum and how their relationship dynamic changes when she becomes his age rather than an adult authority figure. This creates new possibilities, but also new complications for their relationship going forward. Mortal Recoil shows Princess Bubblegum becoming possessed by the Lich after falling into a well. Initially appearing to recover at the hospital, she begins displaying demonic behavior, wilting flowers with her touch, setting her room on fire with her mind, and drinking dangerous chemicals that transform her into a massive black monster. Ice King reveals he witnessed the Lich's spirit enter Princess Bubblegum at the well and offers to help despite Finn's initial rejection. When Finn's attempt to cure her with love fails, he reluctantly accepts Ice King's assistance to freeze the monster. However, the freezing shatters Princess Bubblegum's body completely. At the hospital, doctors reassemble her but discover insufficient material, resulting in Princess Bubblegum emerging as a 13-year-old, F-teen age, the same age as Finn. The episode ends ominously with the Lich's spirit now possessing a snail, indicating the threat continues. Moving on to Blank-Eyed Girl. Blank-Eyed Girl, Adventure Time's urban legend horror. This episode explores how urban legends and collective belief can manifest into reality through the concept of tulpas, EO, physical manifestations of concentrated thought. When Finn and Jake encounter mysterious blank-eyed girls, they discover these entities exist because people believe in them, fed by conspiracy theorist Starchy's radio show. The episode begins with Finn and Jake at home listening to Starchy's conspiracy radio show, Graveyard Shift, which is celebrating its 5th anniversary. Starchy discusses various conspiracy theories, including claims that chocolate has been replaced by mud and that the Burrito Man is trying to genetically change people into tortillas. A banana guard calls in to report seeing a girl with eerie blank eyes in his laundromat reflection, but when he turned around, nobody was there. Starchy explains that weird girls with soulless blank eyes have been spotted across multiple kingdoms for centuries, and he offers several theories about their nature. Jake dismisses the show as baloney and questions why the radio is always tuned to Starchy's program when they're in the house. Finn tries to listen to the frightened caller while Jake grows increasingly skeptical of the conspiracy theories being discussed. When night falls, Finn and Jake encounter the blank-eyed girls outside their home. Jake panics and wants to call child services or an exterminator, but Finn decides to test whether the girls are real threats. He tries to convince Jake that creepy is just a label used to distance people from things they don't understand. Finn calls Starchy's radio show for advice, while the blank-eyed girls stare at them through the window. Starchy suggests they might follow vampire rules and cannot enter without invitation. When this fails and the girl invites herself in, Starchy recommends fairy rules, offering cream in a saucer to appease their hunger. Jake reluctantly goes to get cream while Finn stays on the phone with Starchy. The cream offering fails when the bowl shatters, prompting Starchy to suggest they might be haints who hate clarinet music. Finn tries playing clarinet, which initially seems to work, but the music actually attracts more blank-eyed girls. The situation escalates when 6 blank-eyed girls appear, all drawn by the clarinet music. Starchy then claims they are undead who fear the gaze of yard chickens. Since their chicken ran away, Jake improvises by acting like a chicken, but this also proves ineffective. Frustrated with Starchy's useless advice, Finn declares that all the recommendations are made-up baloney. He decides to research the phenomenon properly by going to the library instead of relying on conspiracy theories and hearsay. At the library, Turtle Princess, who has dyed her hair, helps them research creepy blank-eyed girls. She discovers they are an urban legend that first appeared 5 years ago, exactly when Starchy's radio show began. This timing makes Finn realize the connection between the show and the manifestations. Turtle Princess explains the concept of tulpas, physical manifestations of concentrated collective thought. They're entities who depend on the energy of people believing in them in order to exist, people like Starchy's listeners. She learned this information from Starchy's radio show, creating an ironic loop of misinformation. Immediate aftermath. Armed with this knowledge, Finn returns home with a plan to defeat the blank-eyed girls by refusing to believe in them. He demonstrates this approach by deliberately walking through their delightfully not creepy doorway and sitting on his not creepy couch. Finn explains his philosophy that creepy is just a label used to distance people from things they don't understand or that remind them of uncomfortable aspects of themselves. He declares that creepiness is not an actual thing unless people choose to believe in it. Jake struggles to maintain this mindset, repeatedly telling himself, it's baloney, it's Starchy's baloney, while trying to think of wholesome things. However, his fear overwhelms him when even his mental image of Lady Rainicorn becomes corrupted, and he screams about pizza being creepy too. Long-term repercussions. Jake's breakdown leads him to surrender completely, crying and telling the blank-eyed girls they can do what you will. However, this moment of defeat reveals the truth. The girls respond with confusion, asking, "What?" in normal, high-pitched voices. The revelation comes when Finn and Jake discover the girls are wearing contact lenses to create the blank-eyed effect. They are actually just regular children playing a prank, not supernatural entities at all. Jake calls it baloney and declares them nothing but some kids playing a dumb prank. When Finn threatens to call the police and asks where their parents are, the girls remove their contact lenses and wigs, revealing they are completely bald underneath. This unexpected detail suggests there may be more to their story than a simple prank. The episode ends ambiguously when Jake asks, "What the junk was that?" and Finn responds, "I think it was." Beautiful. This final exchange suggests that while the supernatural threat was debunked, there remains something mysterious and perhaps moving about the encounter. The episode explores themes of how beliefs can shape reality, the power of suggestion, and the way urban legends spread through media. It shows how conspiracy theories and fear-mongering can create real effects even when the underlying claims are false. The revelation that the girls were just children playing a prank serves as a commentary on how fear and paranoia can make people see threats where none exist. However, the children's baldness and Finn's final comment about beauty introduce an element of genuine mystery, suggesting that while the supernatural explanation was wrong, there may still be a poignant human story behind their behavior that the episode chooses not to fully explain. Blank-Eyed Girl explores how urban legends and collective belief can manifest through tulpas, physical manifestations of concentrated thought. When Finn and Jake encounter mysterious blank-eyed girls at their home, they initially follow advice from conspiracy theorist Starchy's radio show, trying vampire rules, fairy offerings, clarinet music, and chicken gazes. After learning that these entities depend on people believing in them, Finn attempts to defeat them by refusing to acknowledge their creepiness and declaring such things only exist if you choose to believe. However, the girls turn out to be regular children wearing contact lenses as a prank. When they remove their disguises, the children are revealed to be completely bald, adding an unexplained element that Finn calls beautiful. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to The Puppets, The Amazing World of Gumball. This episode deals with childhood attachment to toys becoming a dangerous obsession that traps characters in a nightmarish puppet world. Created in collaboration with the makers of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, it explores themes of growing up, letting go of the past, and how childhood innocence can become twisted and controlling. The episode begins with Gumball and Darwin cleaning out their attic for a garage sale, discovering old toys from 7 years ago. They find various childhood items, including a digital pet that spells "Clean Me" when Darwin assumes it needs batteries, and a dangerous Mighty Flies toy that cuts things in half. When Darwin discovers their old puppet toys, Grady, Frank, and Howdy, Gumball tells him it's time to grow up and learn to let things go. However, Darwin becomes immediately attached to Frank and Howdy, putting them on his hands and promising through the puppets that they'll have fun forever and ever, and that he'll never take them off his hands again. This promise creates an unhealthy obsession, as Darwin literally refuses to remove the puppets, even taking them to the bathroom. The puppets appear shocked by this commitment, but Darwin insists he made them a promise, showing how childhood vows can become adult prisons. Darwin's puppet obsession begins affecting his daily life and relationships. At the bus stop, he makes Howdy flirt with Rocky, the bus driver, asking where he has been all of her life and requesting 1 ticket to Kiss Town. This distraction causes Rocky to crash the bus into a truck, demonstrating how Darwin's puppet behavior has real-world consequences. In the cafeteria, Darwin continues the inappropriate behavior by making Howdy tell the injured Rocky to call me. When Gumball discusses the bus accident and mocks the idea of a puppet driving a bus, Frank and Howdy become offended. Darwin then uses the puppets to viciously insult Gumball, calling his butt twice as wide as his shoulders and saying, nature has already done enough damage to his face. This marks a turning point where the puppets begin influencing Darwin to act aggressively toward his own brother. Gumball retaliates by slapping Darwin with meat from his sandwich, showing how the puppet obsession is destroying their relationship. The situation escalates when Darwin bathes with the puppets still on his hands. When Gumball discovers this and tries to convince Darwin to remove them, Frank and Howdy attack Gumball directly. After a struggle, Gumball pulls the puppets off Darwin's hands and throws them in the trash, causing Darwin great distress. That night, Frank and Howdy escape the trash and drag Grady back into the house, declaring their intention to kill Gumball. They first destroy Gumball's video game console with a bat as revenge for replacing them, showing their jealousy toward anything that took Darwin's attention away from them. When Gumball confronts Darwin about fishing the puppets out of trash, Frank explains that Darwin made a promise never to abandon them. Howdy declares that Darwin lives in their world now, indicating complete psychological control. Frank and Howdy convince the now mindless Darwin to play, and both Darwin and the puppets faint, leaving Gumball with no choice but to put on Grady to enter their world. Putting on Grady transports Gumball to a bizarre puppet dimension filled with imaginary characters from his and Darwin's childhood. This world represents the dark side of childhood imagination, where innocent play becomes eternal imprisonment. Gumball finds Darwin in a house where Frank and Howdy are forcing him to participate in endless, repetitive activities while singing about having fun non-stop. However, this constant forced play is actually torture for Darwin, showing how childhood pleasures can become adult nightmares when they never end. When Gumball attempts to rescue Darwin, Grady betrays him, revealing this was a trap all along. The puppets declare it's now their turn to play with both brothers, who become controlled like puppets themselves. The roles reverse as Gumball and Darwin are forced to perform the same activities they once made the puppets do: fighting, smearing themselves with worms, eating toenails and grease, and wearing itchy fleece. This reversal shows how childhood cruelty toward toys becomes psychological torture when the power dynamic flips. The activities that seemed innocent when imposed on inanimate objects become horrifying when experienced by conscious beings. Darwin manages to find a loose piece of string on Grady's arm and rips it off, also tearing Howdy's left eye and Frank's torso. This physical destruction of the puppets breaks their power, causing them to scream as their world explodes around them. Long-term repercussions. The puppet world's destruction returns Gumball and Darwin to reality, where they sit on their front deck during the garage sale. When their mother Nicole asks if they're okay with giving away their old toys, they respond, "Yeah, pretty sure," but Grady immediately attacks Billy, a potential buyer. This ending reveals that the puppet threat is not completely eliminated. Despite their apparent victory over the puppet world, Grady remains active and hostile in the real world, suggesting that some childhood traumas and attachments cannot be easily discarded. The episode serves as a dark allegory about the difficulty of growing up and letting go of childhood attachments. It shows how promises made in innocence can become psychological prisons, and how nostalgic childhood memories can transform into controlling, destructive forces when held onto too tightly. The collaboration with the creators of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared brings their signature style of subverting innocent childhood imagery to reveal underlying horror. The episode suggests that while childhood imagination is valuable, becoming trapped in it prevents healthy development and can turn beneficial attachments into harmful obsessions. The puppet world represents a form of psychological regression, where the comfort of childhood becomes a prison that prevents growth and damages relationships. The episode's ending implies that completely escaping these childhood attachments may be impossible, but recognizing their potentially destructive nature is the first step toward healthy development. The Puppets shows Darwin becoming obsessed with childhood puppet toys Frank, Howdy, and Grady, refusing to remove them even for basic activities. His attachment escalates when the puppets begin controlling his behavior, making him insult Gumball and causing a bus accident. After Gumball throws the puppets away, they come alive seeking revenge and drag both brothers into a nightmarish puppet dimension where childhood play becomes eternal torture. The puppets force Gumball and Darwin to perform degrading acts until Darwin destroys them by ripping their strings. However, the episode ends with Grady still active and attacking someone at their garage sale, suggesting that some childhood attachments can never be fully escaped. Moving on to The Signal, The Amazing World of Gumball. This episode presents a disturbing breakdown of reality where technical glitches corrupt the show itself, making Gumball appear to insult Darwin when he's actually trying to compliment him. The glitches escalate until the characters realize they're trapped in a malfunctioning TV show, creating existential horror through technical failure. The episode begins at Elmore Mall with Gumball and Darwin shopping for hats. When Darwin tries on different hats and asks for Gumball's opinion, Gumball attempts to give positive responses but begins glitching every time he tries to speak. These glitches corrupt his compliments, making them sound like insults to Darwin. The technical problems extend beyond just dialogue. When Darwin asks if a beanie makes his head look fat, Gumball's glitched response causes Darwin to think he's being insulted and storm off. This establishes the central conflict: communication breakdown caused by technical malfunction rather than actual relationship problems. Meanwhile, at home, Richard experiences similar technical difficulties with their television, which displays a no signal message. His frustrated attempts to fix the TV by moving the sofa and deciding to watch the fridge instead show how the signal problems affect their entire world. Build up. The glitching worsens when Gumball returns home and tries to reconcile with Darwin. During Darwin's exercise routine, Gumball's glitches become physical, accidentally injuring Darwin and making their conflict more serious. The technical problems are now causing actual harm beyond just miscommunication. In the bathroom, Gumball attempts to cheer Darwin up by tickling him, but when Darwin smiles, he glitches and appears to be melting, nauseating Gumball. This marks an escalation where the glitches affect Darwin's physical appearance in disturbing ways. When they try to hug and make up, Darwin glitches again, showing human eyes replacing his regular fish eyes, creating another nauseating visual distortion. Gumball tries writing an apology message to Darwin, but the glitches corrupt his spoken words, making the sincere written apology sound rude when read aloud. This demonstrates how the technical problems prevent genuine communication and resolution, trapping them in an endless cycle of misunderstanding. Richard intervenes by pretending to glitch himself to distract the fighting brothers, showing his awareness of the technical problems. He takes them for ice cream, ostensibly to cheer them up, but really as an excuse to get ice cream for himself. In the car, Richard tries playing a game where Darwin sarcastically suggests guessing what offensive thing Gumball will say next. Richard, missing the sarcasm, enthusiastically creates funny insults that begin cheering Darwin up. However, the scene suddenly glitches and jumps to a gas station, where Richard is filling the car with gas. This scene jump represents a major escalation where entire sequences are being corrupted. Darwin finally realizes that Gumball wasn't actually insulting him and that the glitching was responsible for their conflict. He apologizes for not believing Gumball, but their reconciliation is interrupted when they discover their car is now moving down the highway without a driver. The car chase sequence becomes increasingly surreal as glitches create obstacle courses that shouldn't exist. The vehicle crashes into Joyful Burger, then glitches back and forth between locations, nearly hitting Larry and ending up back at the mall's TV section where the episode began. Immediate aftermath. During this chaotic sequence, Gumball and Darwin reach the horrifying realization that they are characters in a TV show that is malfunctioning. This meta-awareness represents the ultimate escalation of the episode's technical horror, FS. The characters become conscious of their fictional nature due to the breakdown of their reality's infrastructure. The revelation that they exist within a television program that is experiencing signal problems explains all the glitches, scene jumps, and communication failures they've experienced. This knowledge is both liberating, explaining their problems, and terrifying, revealing their lack of agency. Long-term repercussions. The episode abruptly cuts to the Watterson family sitting at their dinner table, with Richard declaring that Gumball and Darwin made up. Nicole, Aeneas, and Richard laugh naturally while Gumball and Darwin join in, mirthlessly, showing their awareness that this scene feels forced and artificial. This final scene suggests that their entire conflict and resolution may have been predetermined by the show's narrative structure, regardless of their actual feelings or the technical problems they experienced. Their mirthless laughter indicates they understand they're performing emotions, rather than genuinely feeling them. The episode ends with one final glitch that cuts everything off abruptly, emphasizing that even their moment of supposed resolution is subject to technical failure. This ending provides no real closure, instead highlighting how characters in a malfunctioning show cannot achieve genuine resolution when their reality itself is unstable. The episode serves as a meta-commentary on television production, technical failures, and the existential horror of realizing one's entire reality is artificial and subject to external technical problems. It explores themes of communication breakdown, the fragility of relationships when mediated by technology, and the disturbing implications of becoming aware of one's fictional nature. The horror comes not from supernatural elements, but from the breakdown of the basic infrastructure that maintains their reality, making it impossible for characters to trust their own experiences or maintain genuine relationships when their world itself is unreliable. The signal shows Gumball and Darwin's relationship breaking down due to technical glitches that corrupt Gumball's compliments into apparent insults. When Darwin tries on hats at the mall, Gumball's attempts to praise him glitch out, making Darwin think he's being mocked. The glitches escalate throughout the episode, affecting their physical appearances and causing scene jumps that skip important moments. During a car ride with Richard, the glitches cause their vehicle to drive itself through surreal obstacle courses before crashing. Gumball and Darwin eventually realize they are characters in a malfunctioning TV show, explaining all the technical problems. The episode ends with an artificial family dinner scene where they laugh mirthlessly before cutting off abruptly with one final glitch. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to The Void, The Amazing World of Gumball. This episode explores the terrifying concept of being erased from existence and forgotten by everyone, as Gumball and Darwin discover their missing classmate Molly has been sucked into The Void, a dimension where the world stores its mistakes. The episode deals with themes of memory, existence, and the horror of being deemed irrelevant by reality itself. The episode begins with Gumball and Darwin watching cheerleaders practice at the school stadium. When the cheerleaders form a pyramid, they collapse, injure themselves, and explode. This violent opening establishes something is wrong with their world, though the boys initially just wonder if the cheerleaders are missing something. Mr. Small appears wearing a tinfoil hat and claims there's a conspiracy of things going missing in Elmore. He advises them to look for what is not there, look for what does not make sense, introducing the episode's central mystery about absence and erasure. When Darwin goes to his locker, he notices something disturbing. There are lockers 115 and 117, but no locker 116. This missing locker represents a gap in reality where someone should exist but has been completely erased. The boys realize that someone, not just something, is missing from their world. Using the school yearbook, Gumball and Darwin find photographic evidence of someone being erased from their reality. The pictures show gaps and inconsistencies that suggest a person has been systematically removed from their world. After struggling to remember, Gumball realizes the missing person is Molly, a classmate who has been completely forgotten. When they ask other students about Molly, no one else remembers her existence. This creates the disturbing realization that not only has Molly been erased, but everyone's memories of her have been wiped as well. Only Gumball retains fragments of memory about her. Mr. Small provides them with tinfoil hats and helps investigate Molly's disappearance. He advises Gumball to look closely at the missing locker, where they discover a photograph of Molly with Gumball and Darwin standing in front of her treehouse. This photo represents the last remaining evidence that Molly ever existed. They visit the location where Molly's treehouse should be, but find only empty space and a gap where the world folded in on itself. Mr. Small explains that Elmore is not a normal place and sometimes makes mistakes. When they pry open this reality gap, they all get sucked into the void. Inside the void, they discover every mistake the world has ever made, including jorts, Laserdisc, and the mullet. This dimension serves as a storage space for everything reality has deemed unsuccessful or irrelevant. The void represents the terrifying concept that existence itself can judge you as a mistake and erase you from reality. Gumball and Darwin find Molly inside her treehouse, frozen in time. When Gumball pokes her, she unfreezes but has no memory of being sucked into the void. She acts as though she saw the boys just yesterday, unaware that she's been erased from existence. The boys speculate she was sent to the void because she was boring, suggesting that being unremarkable can literally erase you from reality. Meanwhile, Mr. Small searches for Janice, who turns out to be a van rather than a person, showing how the void contains all types of forgotten things, not just people. As they attempt to escape, the void's gap begins rapidly shrinking, threatening to trap them permanently in this dimension of forgotten things. They rush toward the closing exit while the world itself tries to seal away its mistakes forever. They board Janice the van and struggle to start the engine while the void closes around them. The urgency of their escape emphasizes how reality actively wants to keep its mistakes hidden and forgotten. They manage to start the van and propel through the gap just in time to return to the normal world. Once outside, everyone celebrates Molly's rescue, and both Gumball and Mr. Small declare they should inform others about the void's existence. This suggests they want to prevent other people from being forgotten and erased like Molly was. However, the void immediately sucks in their tinfoil hats along with their memories of the entire experience. This ending reveals the true horror. The void not only erases mistakes but also erases any memory of its own existence, ensuring that its victims remain permanently forgotten. The episode ends with everyone forgetting they rescued Molly, forgetting the void exists, and presumably forgetting Molly herself again. This creates a cyclical nightmare where people can be repeatedly erased and rescued, but the rescue itself gets erased, trapping victims in permanent obscurity. The episode serves as an existential horror story about the fear of being forgotten and deemed irrelevant. It suggests that reality itself can judge individuals as mistakes and erase them not just from existence, but from memory itself. The concept that being boring can literally cause erasure reflects anxieties about significance and the terror of living an unremarkable life. The void represents the ultimate form of social death, not just being ignored or forgotten by individuals, but being deemed a mistake by reality itself and systematically erased from all records and memories. The episode's ending emphasizes that this process is self-perpetuating, as any awareness of the void gets erased, ensuring victims remain trapped in permanent non-existence. The void shows Gumball and Darwin discovering their missing classmate Molly has been erased from existence and sucked into the void, a dimension where reality stores its mistakes. After finding evidence of Molly through missing locker 116 and a hidden photograph, they enter the void and find her frozen in time inside her treehouse. They escape just as the gap closes, but the void immediately sucks away their tinfoil hats and all memories of their experience, ensuring Molly remains forgotten. The episode explores existential horror about being deemed irrelevant by reality itself and erased not just from existence, but from all memory. The void shows Gumball and Darwin discovering their missing classmate Molly has been erased from existence and sucked into the void, a dimension where reality stores its mistakes. After finding evidence of Molly through missing locker 116 and a hidden photograph, they enter the void and find her frozen in time inside her treehouse. They escape just as the gap closes, but the void immediately sucks away their tinfoil hats and all memories of their experience, ensuring Molly remains forgotten. The episode explores existential horror about being deemed irrelevant by reality itself and erased not just from existence, but from all memory. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to The Mask, Courage the Cowardly Dog. The Mask, when Courage faced his greatest fear. Sometimes the most terrifying episodes come from the most unexpected places. The Mask stands as one of Courage the Cowardly Dog's darkest entries, dealing with themes that pushed cartoon boundaries in ways that left viewers genuinely disturbed. The episode opens with what seems like a typical morning at the Baggy farm. Courage is napping peacefully outside the henhouse while Muriel collects eggs. The calm atmosphere gets shattered when a mysterious figure in a flowing white robe and massive white mask approaches. This stranger immediately declares that dogs are evil and begins brutally attacking Courage with household objects like kitchen sinks and washing machines. What makes this opening so unsettling is how Muriel completely misreads the situation. She sees Kitty pummeling Courage and cheerfully assumes they're playing together. Muriel even invites this violent stranger to tea, praising Courage for finally making a friend. The disconnect between what viewers see and what Muriel perceives creates an immediate sense of dread that something is very wrong here. During breakfast, Kitty reveals her backstory in fragments that paint a disturbing picture. She explains that her best friend Bunny fell in love with a gangster who treats her like a slave. This gangster, described as a low-down dirty dog, threatened Kitty's life when he discovered she was trying to help Bunny escape. The forced separation from her closest friend has left Kitty unable to face reality, explaining why she hides behind the mask. The abuse escalates throughout the day as Kitty continues targeting Courage with increasingly violent attacks. She beats him with a dead fish while Muriel remains oblivious, even thanking Kitty for playing with the halibut. The bathroom scene becomes particularly disturbing when Kitty uses Courage as a human plunger, shoving him into the toilet while Eustace walks in and simply apologizes for the interruption. What transforms this from simple slapstick violence into something genuinely horrifying is the underlying psychology at play. Kitty has experienced trauma from a male figure in her life and now projects that pain onto all dogs. Her mask represents her inability to face the reality of losing Bunny, while her violent outbursts toward Courage serve as misplaced revenge against the dog who destroyed her happiness. The dinner conversation reveals another layer of the episode's darkness when Kitty demonstrates her ability to see uncomfortable truths about others. She exposes Muriel's secret eating habits and Eustace's lies about his repair skills, showing how pain can give someone a cruel clarity about human weaknesses. This scene establishes that Kitty possesses genuine insight beneath her trauma, making her more than just a one-dimensional antagonist. The episode's most shocking moment comes when Courage discovers Kitty's true identity. Peering through the keyhole, he watches as she removes her mask to reveal she's actually a cat. This revelation completely changes the context of everything that happened before. The dog versus cat dynamic suddenly makes sense, but it also raises disturbing questions about prejudice and how trauma can twist someone's worldview. Courage's decision to help Bunny represents his greatest act of bravery in the entire series. Despite being brutally attacked all day, he chooses to enter dangerous territory to reunite two friends. His journey to Mad Dog's apartment building takes him to the literal wrong side of the tracks that Kitty mentioned, creating a visual representation of the socioeconomic divide that separates the characters. The Mad Dog sequences introduce a level of realistic domestic violence rarely seen in children's cartoons. Mad Dog's control over Bunny goes beyond typical cartoon villainy into genuinely disturbing territory. He isolates her from friends, threatens violence, and literally buries her up to her neck in dirt when she tries to escape. The flower pot burial scene serves as a metaphor for how abusive relationships can trap victims while making their suffering invisible to the outside world. The climactic train sequence brings all the episode's themes together in a moment of genuine redemption. Courage's willingness to sacrifice himself by steering Mad Dog's car into the oncoming train demonstrates that true bravery means protecting others despite personal cost. The train itself becomes a symbol of escape and freedom, carrying Kitty and Bunny away from their traumatic past toward a better future. Kitty's final acknowledgement that not all dogs are bad represents more than just character growth. It shows how personal connections can help people overcome prejudice born from trauma. Her ability to see Courage's heroism allows her to separate her individual experiences from her broader assumptions about an entire group. The episode's ending brings a bittersweet resolution that acknowledges how trauma changes people permanently. While Kitty and Bunny escape together, Eustace ends up wearing Kitty's discarded mask while trying to fix the boiler. This detail suggests that masks and hidden identities are universal human experiences, not limited to those who have suffered obvious trauma. The mask remains controversial because it tackled themes of domestic violence, prejudice, and psychological trauma in ways that felt too real for a children's cartoon. The episode's willingness to show genuine suffering without easy solutions created something that disturbed viewers on a deeper level than typical Monster of the Week episodes. It proved that sometimes the most terrifying stories come from recognizable human experiences rather than supernatural threats. The Mask proved that Courage's most terrifying episodes came from real human trauma rather than supernatural monsters. The episode's unflinching look at domestic violence, prejudice, and psychological abuse created something genuinely disturbing that stuck with viewers long after the credits rolled. Moving on to King Ramses' Curse, Courage the Cowardly Dog. King Ramses' Curse, the digital nightmare that haunted childhood. Sometimes the most terrifying moments in animation come from breaking established visual rules. King Ramses' Curse achieved legendary status by introducing computer-generated horror into a traditionally hand-drawn world, creating an uncanny valley effect that left viewers deeply unsettled. The episode begins with cat burglars fleeing police after stealing a $1 million stone slab from King Ramses' tomb. When their getaway becomes impossible, they bury their stolen treasure near the Baggy Farms water pump. The mysterious fog that suddenly appears signals that supernatural forces are already at work, and when King Ramses himself materializes to demand the return of his property, the thieves meet a gruesome fate as locusts consume both them and their vehicle entirely. This opening sequence establishes the episode's central theme of greed leading to destruction. The thieves represent the first victims of Ramses' curse, showing viewers exactly what happens to those who refuse to return what belongs to the ancient king. Their complete annihilation by the locust swarm serves as a warning that goes completely unheeded by the episode's main antagonist. Courage discovers the buried slab while digging near the water pump, unwittingly bringing an ancient curse into the Bag household. The slab features 4 prophetic images: King Ramses himself, water waves, a phonograph, and a locust. These symbols serve as a roadmap for the supernatural punishment that will unfold, though their meaning becomes clear only as each plague strikes. When a television news report reveals the slab's $1 million value, Eustace's greed immediately takes control. His transformation from dismissing the artifact as garbage from King Garbage to clutching it possessively shows how quickly avarice can corrupt rational thinking. Muriel's repeated pleas to return the stolen property represent the voice of moral reason that Eustace completely ignores. The episode's most iconic and disturbing element arrives when King Ramses appears at the farmhouse door. The decision to render Ramses using early CGI animation while keeping everything else in traditional 2D creates an otherworldly effect that makes the ancient king feel genuinely alien and threatening. His stilted movements and computerized appearance suggest something that exists outside the normal rules of the Courage universe. Ramses' ultimatum introduces the episode's central conflict through his repeated demand to return the slab or suffer my curse. His warning about 3 plagues, each worse than the last, follows the biblical pattern of escalating divine punishment, positioning the ancient king as an agent of cosmic justice. Eustace's dismissive response and his obsession with negotiating a price reveal his complete failure to understand the supernatural forces he's dealing with. The first plague transforms the Baggy house into an underwater nightmare as torrential floods burst from every surface. Water pours from behind picture frames, through the stuffed moose head, and down the stairs in massive waves. The family retreats to the attic as furniture gets swept away and water levels rise to the ceiling. This sequence demonstrates the curse's power to bend physical reality, turning a familiar domestic space into a death trap. Courage's heroic descent through the flooded house to reach the basement drain showcases his willingness to risk everything for his family. His underwater journey past the stubborn Eustace, who still clutches the slab even while wearing snorkeling gear, emphasizes how greed can blind someone to mortal danger. The basement drain serves as a clever visual metaphor for how problems can be solved when someone takes direct action rather than clinging to what causes the trouble. The second plague introduces The Man in Gauze, a torturous pop song that plays at deafening volume throughout the area. This audio assault forces everyone to cover their ears in agony while Courage searches frantically for the source. His discovery of a phonograph hidden behind a rock leads to one of the episode's most satisfying moments as he demolishes the music player with a baseball bat, delivering multiple strikes to ensure the torture ends completely. The musical plague represents a particularly cruel form of punishment because it attacks the victim's sanity rather than just their physical safety. The upbeat melody contrasts sharply with its painful volume, creating cognitive dissonance that makes the experience even more disturbing. This plague shows how the curse adapts to cause maximum suffering through psychological torture. The final plague brings the locust swarm that consumed the original thieves back to finish what Ramses started. These insects devour everything in their path with mechanical precision, consuming the water pump platform, the henhouse posts, the truck tires, and eventually half the farmhouse itself. The visual of locusts systematically eating away the roof while the family huddles below creates genuine terror as their safe space literally disappears around them. The climactic struggle between Courage and Eustace over the slab represents the battle between selflessness and greed that drives the entire episode. Even as locusts breach the ceiling and death approaches, Eustace refuses to let go of his potential fortune. Only when the insects directly threaten him does he finally release the slab, allowing Courage to throw it outside and end the supernatural assault. Eustace's immediate attempt to reclaim the slab after the danger passes reveals that he learned nothing from nearly dying. His confrontation with Ramses, where he arrogantly declares the ancient king is outta ammo, demonstrates the kind of hubris that leads to ultimate punishment. The return of the locust swarm, specifically targeting Eustace, shows that the curse adapts to punish those who refuse to accept its justice. The episode's conclusion provides perfect poetic justice as Eustace becomes permanently trapped within Ramses's tomb, his image replacing the pharaoh's on the recovered slab. His eternal fate of repeating, "What's your offer?" transforms his defining character trait into an endless punishment. The visual of Eustace's screaming face carved in stone suggests that some forms of greed lead to consequences that extend far beyond death. Professor Frith's television appearance wraps up the episode by confirming the slab's return to its proper resting place, though viewers know the full truth about what happened to Eustace. This ending reinforces the episode's moral message while providing dark satisfaction for those who watched Eustace's selfishness nearly destroy his family multiple times throughout the series. King Ramses' Curse remains one of Courage's most memorable episodes because it successfully combined ancient mythology with cutting-edge animation techniques to create something genuinely frightening. The CGI Ramses became an icon of early 2000s animation horror, proving that sometimes the most effective scares come from making familiar formats feel unnaturally wrong. The episode's exploration of greed, justice, and supernatural consequences resonated with viewers who recognize the timeless truth that some prices are too high to pay, no matter how much money might be involved. King Ramses' Curse terrorized viewers by breaking animation conventions, with its CGI pharaoh demanding justice for stolen property. The episode's biblical plagues and Eustace's ultimate transformation into a screaming stone carving proved that some curses carry consequences beyond death, while the unsettling digital animation made Ramses feel genuinely otherworldly. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Freaky Fred, Courage the Cowardly Dog. Freaky Fred, the poetic predator who made hair terrifying. Sometimes the most disturbing villains hide behind charming facades and speak in rhyme. Freaky Fred created one of television's most unsettling characters by combining psychological manipulation with obsessive behavior, all delivered through eerily pleasant poetry that made viewers question what they were actually watching. The episode introduces Fred through his internal monologue as he rides a bus toward the Baggy farm, immediately establishing his disturbing nature through rhyming narration. His opening words about being very naughty carry sinister undertones that become clear as his story unfolds. The shadowy presentation of Fred on the bus, with only his eyes visible, creates an ominous atmosphere that suggests something fundamentally wrong beneath his polite exterior. Fred arrives at the farm as Muriel's nephew, using family connections to gain access to his victims. His innocent explanation of taking a holiday masks his true purpose, while his immediate fixation on courage reveals his predatory instincts. The wristband reading "Home for Freaky Barbers" serves as a crucial warning sign that Courage desperately tries to communicate to the oblivious adults, showing how predators often carry obvious red flags that get overlooked or dismissed. Eustace's paranoid reactions to Fred appear comedic on the surface, but actually represent justified suspicion of someone who clearly poses a threat. His repeated use of "freak" and his efforts to avoid Fred demonstrate survival instincts that Muriel unfortunately ignores in favor of family politeness. The bathroom door malfunction that traps Courage alone with Fred creates the perfect scenario for predatory behavior to occur in private. The bathroom setting becomes a psychological torture chamber, where Fred reveals his disturbing history through rhyming flashbacks. His story about shaving his pet hamster establishes the pattern of his obsessive behavior, showing how he derives pleasure from forcibly removing hair from helpless creatures. The hamster's transformation from happy to angry mirrors what Fred does to all his victims, taking away their autonomy and leaving them violated. Fred's reminiscence about Barbara, his former girlfriend, exposes the truly predatory nature of his behavior. His description of her sweet-as-lace expression changing to fury after he shaved her head without consent shows how he violates personal boundaries and destroys relationships through his compulsive actions. The phrase "she needed space" represents his complete inability to understand the trauma he inflicts on others. The forced haircut sequence becomes genuinely disturbing, as Fred restrains Courage and systematically removes his fur while maintaining his pleasant demeanor. The contrast between Fred's calm narration and Courage's obvious terror creates cognitive dissonance that makes the scene feel like watching an actual assault. The La 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 choir music that drowns out Courage's screams adds a surreal quality that makes the violence feel even more wrong. Fred's story about the bearded customer in his barbershop reveals the escalation of his behavior from pets to people. His excitement over the man's abundant hair and his inability to control himself when presented with the opportunity shows how his compulsion has grown stronger over time. The fact that this incident presumably led to his institutionalization suggests that his previous victims finally received justice. The episode's most chilling element comes from Fred's complete lack of remorse or self-awareness about his actions. He refers to his assault as being naughty and treats the entire experience as a pleasant social visit rather than criminal behavior. His cheerful demeanor while committing violations shows the mindset of someone who genuinely believes his victims should be grateful for his attention. Courage's desperate attempts to call for help while being systematically violated represent the experience of victims who find themselves trapped with predators. His phone call to the institution shows resourcefulness under extreme stress, though the delayed response raises questions about how long institutions take to reclaim dangerous individuals who escape their custody. The arrival of the landlords who recapture Fred provides resolution, but also reveals disturbing implications about the system. The fact that Fred was apparently in some form of supervised release or had escaped from custody suggests that dangerous individuals sometimes gain access to potential victims through institutional failures. The men's preparation with straitjackets and their urgency indicate they know exactly how dangerous Fred really island. Fred's final message carved into Courage's rear end serves as a lasting violation that extends beyond the physical assault. The "With Love Fred" signature shows how predators often frame their abuse as affection, making victims question their own understanding of what happened to them. This permanent mark ensures that Courage will never completely escape the memory of his trauma. The episode's conclusion, with Muriel describing the encounter as a lovely visit, demonstrates how predators often manipulate family members and authority figures into protecting them. Her complete ignorance of what actually happened shows how abuse can occur right under the noses of people who should be protecting victims. Eustace's absence throughout the crisis represents the failure of potential protectors to be present when they're needed most. Freaky Fred remains controversial because it presented a realistic predator using tactics that viewers could recognize from real life. The episode's poetry and rhyme scheme made Fred seem charming and harmless on the surface, while depicting genuinely predatory behavior underneath. This combination created a character who felt authentically dangerous rather than cartoonishly evil, making the episode disturbing in ways that resonated with adult viewers who understood the real-world implications of Fred's actions. The episode succeeded in creating horror through psychological realism rather than supernatural elements, proving that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones who look completely normal and speak in pleasant rhymes while violating every boundary they encounter. Freaky Fred disturbed viewers by presenting a realistic predator who used charm and family connections to access victims. Fred's rhyming narration masked genuinely predatory behavior, creating a character who felt authentically dangerous rather than cartoonishly evil. The episode's willingness to depict psychological manipulation and boundary violations through pleasant poetry made it one of the most unsettling entries in the entire series. Moving on to Simon and Marcy, Adventure Time. Simon and Marcy, When Love Means Losing Yourself. Sometimes the most heartbreaking episodes come disguised as simple flashbacks. Simon and Marcy revealed the tragic origin story behind Adventure Time's seemingly comedic Ice King, transforming him from a joke character into one of television's most devastating examples of love, sacrifice, and the slow loss of identity. The episode begins in the present day with Marceline playing basketball alongside Finn, Jake, and Ice King. When questioned about why she invited the ancient chump to join them, Marceline's admission that Ice King is very dear to my heart and that she loves him creates immediate confusion. Her explanation about their long history together sets up a story that completely recontextualizes everything viewers thought they knew about their relationship. The flashback transports viewers to 996 years earlier, just after the Mushroom War devastated civilization. Simon Petrikov appears as a kind, scholarly man caring for 7-year-old Marceline in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Their playful interaction over a dead rat in a mailbox and their joke about watching a boring VHS tape establishes the warm, father-daughter dynamic that forms the emotional core of the episode. The introduction of Simon's crown reveals the source of his eventual transformation into Ice King. When rustling in the bushes suggests danger, Simon reluctantly puts on the magical artifact despite Marceline's protests. His transformation is immediate and disturbing as his nose and hair grow longer, his personality shifts toward mania, and he begins hovering in the air while calling Marceline Gunther instead of her real name. The deer incident demonstrates how the crown's power works, as both protection and curse. While Simon successfully defends them from what turns out to be harmless wildlife, his magical overkill and personality change show how the crown warps his perception and judgment. Marceline's successful attempt to knock the crown off his head with a snowball reveals that he can still be reached, but her observation that he's getting worse establishes the progressive nature of his condition. Simon's promise not to wear the crown again represents a commitment he knows he cannot keep. His awareness of the crown's effects on his mind, combined with his responsibility to protect Marceline in a dangerous world, creates an impossible situation where using the artifact means losing himself, but refusing to use it means potentially losing her. The Cheers routine Simon performs with the broken television shows his desperate attempts to maintain normalcy and provide comfort in an abnormal world. His detailed recreation of the sitcom, complete with sound effects and audience participation, demonstrates both his pre-war knowledge and his commitment to giving Marceline moments of childhood joy despite their circumstances. Marceline's illness adds urgency to their situation and forces Simon to make increasingly difficult choices. His determination to find chicken soup for her represents the lengths parents go to care for sick children, but in a post-apocalyptic setting where simple remedies become life or death quests. The shopping cart ride and his improvised song show his continued efforts to maintain lightness despite growing desperation. The abandoned grocery store sequence reveals the broader dangers of their world through mutant creatures that have survived the nuclear fallout. Simon's initial attempt to fight without the crown, using the artifact as a simple weapon, shows his genuine desire to keep his promise to Marceline. However, the appearance of more threats makes clear that physical combat alone will not be sufficient protection. The clam truck incident escalates the danger while showcasing Simon's growing frustration with their circumstances. His repeated shouting of "Mother" represents the breakdown of his scholarly composure under stress, while his decision to push the truck off the bridge demonstrates desperate thinking that inadvertently attracts more threats through the noise. The final alley confrontation forces Simon to break his promise in the most heartbreaking way possible. His singing of the Cheers theme song while using the crown's power creates a disturbing juxtaposition between his attempt to maintain human connection and his slide into magical madness. The fact that he remembers enough of himself to remove the crown before completely losing control shows the strength of his love for Marceline. Simon's discovery of chicken soup and his brief moment calling Marceline Gunther reveals how each use of the crown erodes more of his original personality. The name confusion shows that he's beginning to lose the ability to distinguish between his current reality and the crown's influence, setting up the eventual complete transformation into Ice King. The episode's present-day conclusion provides devastating context for Ice King's behavior throughout the series. Marceline's claim that she and Simon lived happily ever after represents a kindness towards someone who sacrificed his sanity for her survival. Her continued affection for Ice King, despite his transformation, shows how love can persist even when the person you love has fundamentally changed. Ice King's obliviousness to the story's significance, evidenced by his whispered plan to score baskets while Marceline tells chump stories, demonstrates how completely his original personality has been erased. The tragedy lies not in dramatic destruction, but in gradual erosion, where Simon Petrikov slowly disappeared one crown usage at a time until only the Ice King remained. The basketball game's continuation after the story represents life moving forward despite trauma and loss. Marceline's ability to maintain relationships with both her past and present versions of Simon shows remarkable emotional resilience, while her willingness to share their story suggests she's found peace with their complicated history. Simon and Marcy succeeded in transforming Adventure Time from a simple children's show into something capable of exploring complex themes about sacrifice, mental illness, and the nature of identity. The episode proved that cartoon characters could carry genuine emotional weight when their actions stemmed from love rather than malice, creating one of television's most effective examples of retroactive character development that completely changed how viewers understood an entire series. Simon and Marcy devastated viewers by revealing how love and sacrifice led to the complete erasure of Simon Petrikov's identity. The episode transformed Ice King from a comedic villain into a tragic figure who gave up his sanity to protect young Marceline, showing how the crown's power slowly consumed his mind with each use until only fragments of his original self remained. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to The Hall of Egress, Adventure Time. The Hall of Egress, when reality becomes the puzzle. Sometimes the most disturbing episodes blur the line between what's real and what's imagined. The Hall of Egress created one of Adventure Time's most psychologically complex stories by trapping Finn in a maze that might exist only in his mind, forcing viewers to question the nature of reality alongside the protagonist. The episode begins with Finn and Jake exploring a cave marked on Flambeau's brother's map, establishing their adventure as a typical dungeon exploration. Jake's mention of sidewalk chalk and Finn's insistence about respecting the ancient temple shows their different approaches to adventure. When the door immediately traps Finn inside alone, the episode signals that this experience will be fundamentally different from their usual quests. Finn's discovery of the Hall of Egress inscription sets up the central concept that will define his entire experience. His flashback to Princess Bubblegum, explaining that egress means exit, provides crucial information while highlighting how knowledge can become both helpful and misleading. The fact that Finn recognizes this as an exit-focused puzzle creates expectations that the episode will systematically subvert. The broken upside-down snowman statue that magically repairs itself introduces the first sign that normal rules don't apply in this space. Finn's logical attempt to break through the hatch and his surprise when the statue reforms shows how the maze operates outside physical laws. This early supernatural element suggests that traditional problem-solving approaches will prove ineffective throughout his journey. Finn's initial mapping strategy represents his methodical approach to solving puzzles through documentation and careful observation. His discovery of the thread and his attempt to follow it like breadcrumbs shows classic dungeon crawling logic, but the immediate spike trap demonstrates how the maze punishes conventional adventure tactics. The episode establishes that every reasonable approach will lead to danger or confusion. The false egress signs scattered throughout the maze create a pattern of deceptive guidance that drives Finn toward increasing frustration. Each sign promising an exit leads instead to another trap, suggesting that the maze actively lies to visitors rather than simply presenting challenges. This malicious deception transforms the space from a puzzle to be solved into a psychological prison designed to break down logical thinking. Finn's growing list of failed escape methods reveals how the maze systematically attacks different problem-solving approaches. His attempts using maps, signs, braille, hieroglyphics, and recorded messages all fail, showing that the maze counters every form of communication and navigation. This comprehensive failure forces Finn to abandon rational approaches and embrace what he calls charging in willy-nilly. The moment Finn abandons strategy and runs blindly through the maze marks the episode's crucial turning point. His successful escape through reckless behavior suggests that the maze rewards intuition over logic, or that overthinking prevents escape. However, his immediate return to the hatch entrance reveals that even apparent success might be illusory, raising questions about what actually constitutes escape. Finn's encounter with Jake outside the maze introduces the episode's most disturbing element, the possibility that none of his experiences were real. Jake's complete lack of memory about the cave and his discovery of only grass, where Finn insists the entrance existed, suggests that Finn never left the starting point. This revelation transforms the entire adventure from external exploration into internal psychological experience. The repeated relocations back to the hatch whenever Finn opens his eyes establish the core mechanic that will define the rest of the episode. Each time Finn believes he's escaped or made progress, opening his eyes returns him to the beginning, suggesting that his entire adventure exists only while his eyes remain closed. This creates a prison where consciousness itself becomes the trap. BMO's gentle questioning about Finn's fear to open his eyes shows how the situation affects those around him. The conversation reveals that Finn understands his predicament, but feels powerless to break the cycle through willpower alone. His insistence that something must change before he can safely open his eyes shows his search for external solutions to what might be an internal problem. Jake's month-long attempt to help Finn through pranks and encouragement demonstrates how friends can unknowingly reinforce problematic patterns. His repeated effort to force Finn's eyes open and his logical arguments about hallucinations show well-meaning but counterproductive support. Jake's frustration with Finn's apparent delusion reflects how mental health struggles can strain relationships even when everyone wants to help. The philosophical debate between Finn and Jake about the nature of reality reaches the heart of the episode's themes. Jake's argument that Finn's experiences represent hallucinations provides a rational explanation, while Finn's insistence on their reality reflects his lived experience. Neither perspective can definitively prove the other wrong, leaving viewers to navigate the same uncertainty that traps Finn. Finn's decision to leave Jake and venture deeper into his experience represents both courage and potential self-destruction. His recognition that he must see this one through on my own shows understanding that some challenges cannot be solved by external help. However, his descent into complete isolation also suggests a dangerous withdrawal from supportive relationships that could indicate deepening psychological distress. The underground chamber where Finn finally screams egress repeatedly represents his breaking point where desperation replaces all strategy. The word that originally meant exit becomes a cry for help when every logical approach has failed. This moment of complete breakdown paradoxically creates the condition that BMO identifies as something's different, suggesting that surrender rather than struggle might be the key to escape. The cryptic message from Princess Bubblegum about the seashell's center and the cornucopia's smallest door provides resolution while maintaining mystery about what actually happened. These metaphorical instructions suggest that escape required finding something small and central rather than obvious and external. The imagery implies that the solution lay in turning inward rather than seeking outward exits. Jake's final comment about some cave and Finn's no-comment response suggests that Finn emerged with knowledge or experience that resists easy explanation. His refusal to discuss what happened shows either trauma that requires processing or wisdom that cannot be communicated directly. The ambiguous ending leaves viewers uncertain whether Finn escaped a real trap or overcame a psychological crisis. The Hall of Egress succeeded in creating genuine psychological horror by making viewers question the reliability of perception itself. The episode's refusal to definitively explain whether Finn's experience was real or imagined reflects how mental health struggles often involve uncertainty about the nature of one's own experiences. By leaving the mystery unsolved, the episode forced viewers to sit with the same discomfort that defines many real psychological challenges, where clear answers remain elusive. The Hall of Egress disturbed viewers by questioning the fundamental nature of reality and perception. Finn's month-long psychological prison, where opening his eyes reset his entire experience, created genuine uncertainty about whether his adventure was real or a manifestation of internal struggle. The episode's refusal to provide clear answers about what actually happened forced viewers to confront the same discomfort that defines many real psychological challenges. Moving on to Teen Titans, Haunted. Haunted, when trauma becomes the monster. Sometimes the most terrifying villains are the ones that live inside our own minds. Teen Titans Haunted explored psychological horror through Robin's obsessive pursuit of his nemesis Slade, creating an episode that blurred the line between external threats and internal demons, while examining how trauma can manifest as perceived reality. The episode opens with Robin maintaining a sleepless vigil in Titan's Tower, monitoring 3 locations across Jump City through the security system. His surveillance of the museum, bridge, and waterfront carnival suggests he's expecting trouble, but the empty streets reveal that his concerns might be unfounded. When Cyborg finds Robin still awake and suggests that whatever he's looking for is probably asleep, Robin's insistence that he has work to do establishes his compulsive behavior from the start. The basement scene, where Robin examines a box of Slade memorabilia, provides crucial context for his mental state. Among the artifacts sits Slade's cracked mask from their previous encounters, carefully reattached, despite the visible fracture running down its left side. Robin's handling of the dusty items triggers a coughing fit that will prove significant later, as this moment represents his first exposure to the chemical reagent hidden within Slade's mask. Cyborg's appearance in the basement and his declaration that he's not coming back shows the rational perspective that Slade is gone forever. His observation that only dust remains of their former enemy carries both literal and metaphorical weight, as the dust from Slade's mask will drive the episode's central conflict. Robin's refusal to accept Slade's death, citing that he was never captured, never found, reveals his inability to find closure without definitive proof. The alarm that interrupts their conversation leads to the Cinderblock encounter, which serves as both genuine threat and catalyst for Robin's psychological breakdown. During the Mountain Road battle, Robin becomes separated from his team when Cinderblock's impact throws him over the guardrail into the forest below. This isolation creates the perfect conditions for his hallucinations to begin, as the chemical reagent starts affecting his nervous system. Robin's first sighting of Slade behind a tree launches a chase sequence that establishes the pattern for their entire confrontation. Slade stays just ahead of Robin's pursuit, easily avoiding his Birdarang attack and disappearing during lightning strikes. The fact that rain passes through Slade rather than splashing off his armor provides an early clue that something supernatural or illusory is occurring, though Robin fails to recognize this warning sign. Slade's taunts about Robin being too slow and having gotten soft target the young hero's deepest insecurities about his abilities and readiness to face serious threats. These psychological attacks prove more effective than physical violence, as they exploit Robin's perfectionist nature and his need to prove himself capable of protecting others. The revelation that Slade freed Cinderblock specifically to get Robin's attention shows how the hallucination adapts to Robin's expectations and fears. The seismic generator plot represents Slade's most ambitious threat yet, with devices placed on fault lines across Jump City capable of splitting the city in half within 3 hours. This apocalyptic scenario appeals to Robin's hero complex while creating urgency that prevents careful analysis of the situation. The fact that Robin can clearly see these generators in his mind while describing their exact locations demonstrates how detailed and convincing his hallucinations have become. The fight sequence on the tree branches showcases Robin's growing desperation as every attack passes harmlessly through his opponent. Slade's ability to predict and counter Robin's moves reflects the young hero's subconscious understanding of his own limitations and patterns. The philosophical exchange about Robin's inability to touch Slade foreshadows the episode's central revelation that the enemy exists only in Robin's mind. When the other Titans search for the alleged seismic generators, their complete failure to find any evidence contradicts Robin's absolute certainty about their locations. Cyborg's thorough seismic sweep of the city's fault lines reveals no unusual activity, while Beast Boy's increasingly severe cold symptoms provide comic relief that contrasts with Robin's deteriorating mental state. The fact that all 3 locations appear completely normal to the other Titans suggests that Robin's perceptions have become fundamentally unreliable. Starfire's inability to see Slade during their forest encounter represents the episode's most crucial moment, as it forces Robin to confront the possibility that his experiences might not be real. Her genuine confusion and distress when Robin accuses her of letting Slade escape shows how his condition affects his relationships with those trying to help him. The pain in her voice when she says, "There was no one there," demonstrates how mental health struggles impact not just the sufferer, but everyone around them. Robin's decision to search alone after his team expresses doubt shows how isolation can worsen psychological conditions. His retreat to Slade's destroyed underground lair represents a return to the source of his trauma, where he can continue his obsessive pursuit without interference from reality-based perspectives. The ruined hideout's maze of broken machinery and debris creates a perfect environment for Robin's mind to project his fears and anxieties. The physical confrontation in the lair escalates Robin's injuries, while Slade remains completely unharmed, providing another clue about the true nature of their conflict. Robin's increasing desperation and his inability to land a single blow contrast sharply with the visible damage he sustains, suggesting that he's somehow inflicting these injuries on himself. The other Titans' discovery of Robin apparently fighting an invisible opponent confirms their worst fears about his mental state. Robin's threat to attack anyone who interferes with his mission marks his complete break from reality and forces his friends to take drastic action. Starfire's decision to stun him with a starbolt represents one of the most difficult moments in the series, as she must choose between Robin's immediate safety and his trust in her. Her emotional devastation after stopping him shows the painful reality of intervening in someone's psychological crisis. The infirmary sequence reveals the physical toll of Robin's condition through medical monitoring that shows his vital signs reaching dangerous levels. His restraints become necessary not just for everyone's safety, but to prevent him from literally killing himself through the stress his mind is inflicting on his body. The gap between his perceived reality and actual circumstances becomes clear when his heart monitor flatlines, just as he believes Slade is about to deliver a killing blow. Raven's telepathic exploration of Robin's mind provides glimpses into his psychological landscape, while confirming that Slade exists only in his perceptions. Her journey through his memories touches on formative experiences that shaped his identity as Robin, including what appears to be his oath-taking ceremony and the circus tragedy that created Dick Grayson's motivation to fight crime. These flashbacks suggest that Robin's dedication to justice stems from deep personal trauma that makes him vulnerable to psychological manipulation. The revelation that Raven can see Slade through Robin's eyes but recognizes him as a manifestation of Robin's stressed mind explains the central mystery. Slade's realness to Robin becomes the only thing that matters, as the psychological and physical effects are identical, whether the threat is external or internal. The fact that Slade can harm Raven while she's connected to Robin's consciousness demonstrates how powerful psychological manifestations can become. The final basement confrontation brings Robin to the brink of psychological and physical destruction as Slade prepares to deliver what he believes will be a fatal blow. Slade's declaration that he is the thing that keeps you up at night and the evil that haunts every dark corner of your mind reveals his true nature as the embodiment of Robin's fears and obsessions. This psychological torment proves more devastating than any physical attack could be. Robin's breakthrough comes when he recognizes the pattern of Slade's behavior and realizes that his enemy appears only in darkness or shadows. His observation that he has sustained numerous injuries while Slade remains unscratched finally breaks through his delusion, allowing him to understand that his friends have been right all along. The simple act of turning on the lights banishes Slade entirely, showing how truth and clarity can dispel even the most convincing psychological manifestations. The medical explanation reveals that Slade's mask contained a chemical reagent designed to infiltrate the nervous system and create realistic hallucinations. This posthumous revenge plot shows Slade's understanding of Robin's psychology and his ability to weaponize the young hero's dedication against him. The fact that the reagent was triggered by an external signal suggests that other forces may be manipulating events from behind the scenes. The episode's conclusion with Beast Boy's exaggerated illness provides necessary comic relief while allowing the other characters to process what they've witnessed. However, the final revelation that someone outside the tower triggered the chemical reaction, combined with Slade's mask glowing red in the basement, suggests that Robin's ordeal was orchestrated by an unknown enemy. This ending maintains uncertainty about whether Slade's apparent death is permanent while setting up future conflicts. Robin's final conversation with his teammates acknowledges his tendency toward obsessive behavior and his difficulty accepting that some threats may be beyond his control. His admission that he sometimes feels like the only one still looking for Slade reveals the isolation that comes with carrying the burden of protecting others. The team's reassurance that you are never alone provides emotional healing while reinforcing the importance of support systems in maintaining mental health. Haunted succeeded in exploring serious themes about trauma, obsession, and psychological breakdown within the framework of a superhero cartoon. The episode's refusal to dismiss Robin's experiences as simply crazy or fake acknowledges that mental health struggles feel completely real to those experiencing them. By showing how chemical manipulation can create convincing alternate realities, the story validates both Robin's perceptions and his friend's concern for his well-being. The episode's lasting impact comes from its honest portrayal of how untreated trauma can manifest as ongoing psychological distress. Robin's obsession with Slade represents how past threats can continue to harm us long after they're gone, while his isolation shows how shame and self-reliance can prevent people from seeking help. The Titan's supportive response demonstrates how friends and family can provide crucial assistance during mental health crises, even when they don't fully understand what's happening. Most importantly, Haunted proved that animated television could tackle complex psychological themes without losing its entertainment value or talking down to younger viewers. The episode's sophisticated approach to mental health issues helped normalize conversations about trauma and hallucinations, while showing that psychological struggles don't make someone weak or broken. Robin's recovery through recognition, support, and medical intervention provides a hopeful model for addressing real-world mental health challenges. The episode remains relevant because it acknowledges that heroes, despite their strength and training, remain vulnerable to psychological manipulation and internal conflicts. By showing Robin's temporary psychological break as a treatable condition rather than a permanent character flaw, Haunted delivered an important message about the nature of mental health and the possibility of recovery with proper support and understanding. Haunted traumatized viewers by showing how psychological manipulation could be more devastating than any physical threat. Robin's chemical-induced hallucinations of Slade demonstrated how untreated trauma can manifest as perceived external dangers, while his team's inability to see his tormentor revealed the isolating nature of mental health struggles. The episode's sophisticated portrayal of psychological breakdown proved that animated television could tackle serious themes about obsession and recovery. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to The End, Teen Titans. The End, when destiny cannot be escaped. Sometimes the most devastating episodes come from characters accepting their darkest fate. Teen Titans: The End delivered a trilogy conclusion that explored themes of sacrifice, destiny, and the powerlessness that comes when prophecy becomes reality, creating one of animation's most emotionally brutal finales. The episode opens in the underground chamber discovered in The Prophecy, where Trigon's voice announces that the time has come for his arrival on Earth. The dialogue between Trigon and Slade reveals their bargain. Slade will deliver Raven in exchange for something precious to him being returned. This deal establishes the episode's central conflict while hinting at Slade's mysterious motivation for serving the demon. Raven's awakening to find the burning red runes covering her body represents the beginning of her transformation into Trigon's portal. Her horrified reaction to these marks shows her understanding that the prophecy is finally coming to pass. The visible manifestation of her demonic heritage serves as a countdown clock that cannot be stopped or hidden, forcing her to confront the reality she has spent her entire life dreading. Robin's cheerful morning greeting and his optimism about the promise of a new day creates devastating irony when contrasted with Raven's knowledge that this day will bring the end of the world. His genuine happiness and belief that anything's possible highlights the cruel gap between his hope and her certainty about their doom. Raven's forced smile in response shows her desperate attempt to give her friends one last normal moment. The breakfast scene with Raven's disastrous pancakes represents her attempt to create positive final memories with her teammates. Her unusual kindness and desire to do something nice for her friends reveals her knowledge that these may be their last hours together. The team's confusion about her uncharacteristic behavior demonstrates how dramatically Raven has always suppressed her emotional connections to protect herself and others. The fight against Plasmus serves as a distraction that allows Raven to momentarily forget her impending fate while demonstrating the team's effectiveness when working together. Robin's grateful acknowledgement when Raven saves him from crashing into a building represents the kind of everyday heroism and mutual support that Raven knows she will soon destroy. Her quiet, "Yeah, sure," response reveals her understanding that she will never be able to collect on his debt. Raven's continued attempts to spend time with her friends through pizza, hiking, and activities she normally avoids shows her desperate desire to experience normal friendship before her transformation. Her willingness to participate in extreme stankball and toenail painting represents a complete reversal of her usual antisocial behavior, driven by the knowledge that she has limited time to show her teammates how much they mean to her. The artificial eclipse that blocks out the sun signals the beginning of Trigon's arrival and forces Raven to reveal the truth about the prophecy. The supernatural darkness spreading across the sky creates an atmosphere of cosmic dread that matches the scale of the threat they face. When Raven's marks reappear and she collapses, her whispered confession that today is the end of the world confirms everyone's worst fears. The Titans' preparation of a high-tech bunker shows their refusal to accept Raven's fatalistic predictions about Trigon's unstoppable power. Robin's confidence that they have never been a villain we couldn't stop before demonstrates the heroic optimism that has carried them through previous crises. However, Raven's explanation that Trigon is the incarnation of evil and the source of all darkness establishes that this threat operates on a completely different level than anything they have faced. Beast Boy's gift of his lucky penny represents the purest expression of friendship and hope in the face of overwhelming despair. His simple gesture shows how even small acts of kindness can provide comfort during the darkest moments. Raven's observation that all the luck in the world won't help us now reveals her understanding that no amount of goodwill can change what is destined to happen. Slade's army of fire demons represents the supernatural forces aligned against the Titans, creatures that exist beyond the physical laws that usually govern their battles. The emergence of these beings from underground suggests that Trigon's influence has been growing beneath the surface, waiting for the prophesied moment to strike. Their immunity to conventional attacks demonstrates the inadequacy of normal heroic methods against demonic power. The battle outside Titan's Tower showcases each team member's abilities while highlighting their ultimate futility against Slade's enhanced powers. Cyborg's transformation into a walking weapons platform and his devastating energy blast represent the absolute limit of the Titan's technological capabilities. When this ultimate attack fails to seriously harm Slade, it becomes clear that conventional force cannot solve their problem. Raven's decision to surrender herself to Slade shows her acceptance that fighting the prophecy only causes more suffering for her friends. Her use of her powers to knock out the other Titans prevents them from following her into danger, while demonstrating how her destiny forces her to hurt the people she loves most. Her gentle, "Goodbye, be safe," reveals the love behind this apparent betrayal. The confrontation between Raven and Slade in the underground passage exposes the futility of their alliance from Slade's perspective. Raven's warning that Trigon won't honor his promises proves accurate when the demon reveals that Raven came willingly, making Slade's services unnecessary. This betrayal demonstrates how evil ultimately consumes even its willing servants. Trigon's revelation that he granted Slade his powers and can take them away shows the temporary nature of demonic gifts. Slade's agonizing loss of his abilities and apparent destruction serves as punishment for his presumption in trying to bargain with a being far beyond his understanding. This scene reinforces that no one can truly control or profit from dealing with absolute evil. The final chamber sequence forces Raven to choose between her friend's immediate safety and the world's ultimate fate. Robin's desperate arguments about destiny being changeable and his insistence that no one knows their destiny represent human refusal to accept predetermination. However, Raven's lifetime of knowledge about her purpose makes his philosophical arguments feel naive, despite their good intentions. Raven's confession about wanting to make their last day perfect reveals the depth of her love for her teammates and her guilt about bringing destruction into their lives. Her acknowledgement that she made wonderful friends shows how her time with the Titans gave her the only genuine happiness she ever experienced. The tragic irony lies in how this love makes her sacrifice even more painful. The barrier Raven creates to protect her friends during the transformation demonstrates her continued care for them even as she fulfills her darkest purpose. The Titans' frantic attempts to break through the shield show their refusal to abandon her, but their powerlessness against her magic reflects their inability to change what must happen. Their desperate attacks on her barrier mirror their futile struggle against fate itself. Raven's recitation of the prophecy, while floating above the stone hand, marks the moment when her human identity disappears and her role as Trigon's portal takes over. The spinning circles of burning runes around her body create a ritualistic atmosphere that emphasizes the ancient and inevitable nature of what is occurring. Her transformation from person to magical gateway represents the ultimate loss of individual agency to cosmic forces. The dropping of Beast Boy's lucky penny as Raven disappears serves as a symbol of hope being abandoned in the face of insurmountable darkness. The coin's fall represents the failure of friendship and goodness to overcome prophetic destiny. Its simple clink against the stone provides a moment of ordinary sound in an extraordinary catastrophe. Trigon's emergence from the portal demonstrates the complete success of the prophecy and the total failure of all resistance efforts. His declaration that "the Earth is mine" marks the achievement of his long-term goal and the beginning of humanity's darkest chapter. The transformation of the chamber into a hellscape shows how his presence immediately corrupts and destroys the normal world. The episode's ending with the Titans facing Trigon's massive shadow represents their transition from heroes who save the day to survivors trying to endure an apocalypse they failed to prevent. Their terror and helplessness in this moment shows how completely the power dynamic has shifted from the beginning of the series. The fade to black suggests that some defeats are so complete that they cannot be immediately overcome. The end succeeded in creating genuine despair by showing how prophecy and destiny can override free will and heroic effort. The episode's refusal to provide easy solutions or last-minute victories demonstrated that some threats truly are unstoppable, no matter how much courage and friendship is brought to bear against them. Raven's sacrifice becomes meaningful, not because it saves anyone, but because it represents her choosing to protect her friends' lives, even while destroying their world. The episode's lasting impact comes from its honest portrayal of how some situations offer only terrible choices between different forms of loss. Raven's love for her friends makes her transformation more tragic rather than less, showing how the deepest emotions can become sources of the greatest pain. The Titans' helplessness in the face of cosmic forces beyond their understanding reflects the human experience of confronting problems too large for individual solutions. Most importantly, the end demonstrated that animated television could deliver genuinely tragic stories without losing emotional authenticity or talking down to viewers. The episode's commitment to following the prophecy to its logical conclusion created a rare example of a children's show that acknowledged how some stories end in defeat rather than victory, preparing viewers for the reality that not all problems can be solved through determination and teamwork alone. The end devastated viewers by showing prophecy and destiny overriding free will and heroic determination. Raven's sacrifice to become Trigon's portal demonstrated how love can make tragedy more painful rather than less, while the Titans' complete helplessness against cosmic forces reflected the human experience of confronting problems beyond individual solutions. The episode's refusal to provide last-minute victories created one of animation's most authentically tragic finales. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Steven Universe, Mindful Education. Mindful education, when trauma demands to be felt. Sometimes the most therapeutic episodes come disguised as simple meditation lessons. Steven Universe's Mindful Education tackled themes of guilt, trauma processing, and emotional avoidance through a framework that taught both characters and viewers healthy coping mechanisms for dealing with overwhelming feelings and intrusive thoughts. The episode opens with Connie arriving at the beach house, carrying Rose's sword, but displaying unusual emotional detachment. Steven's prank with the fake baldness cap reveals how distracted Connie has become, as she barely registers his appearance change until he explicitly points it out. Her lack of engagement with Steven's humor signals that something serious is troubling her, setting up the episode's exploration of how unprocessed emotions affect our ability to connect with others. Pearl's excitement about fusion training and Garnet's specially made two-sided sign demonstrate the supportive environment the crystal gems have created for Steven and Connie's development. Garnet's fusion joke and enthusiastic cheerleading show how the gems encourage the children's growth while making the learning process enjoyable. However, Connie's continued distraction during these interactions foreshadows that her emotional state will interfere with their ability to function as Stevonnie. The Ancient Sky arena training session begins normally with Steven and Connie successfully fusing into Stevonnie to face the Hollow Pearl. Their initial combat performance appears flawless, with Stevonnie discovering new floating abilities that suggest their fusion is becoming more powerful and stable. However, this apparent progress masks the underlying emotional instability that will soon manifest in dangerous ways. Stevonnie's sudden hallucination during combat represents the episode's first major demonstration of how unprocessed trauma affects perception and performance. When Stevonnie sees the Hollow Pearl as a human child, their distress causes them to miss their attack and crash into the ground. This fusion failure reveals that emotional imbalance in one partner can destabilize the entire shared consciousness, creating safety risks during high-stakes situations. Connie's revelation that she beat someone up at school provides the context for her emotional disturbance and introduces themes about how training for violence can create unexpected real-world consequences. Her explanation that an accidental bump triggered her defensive instincts shows how learning combat skills can alter someone's automatic responses in ways that feel beyond their control. The fact that she ran away without helping or apologizing compounds her guilt about the incident. Steven's attempt to comfort Connie by suggesting she try not to think about it represents a common but unhealthy approach to dealing with guilt and trauma. His advice to avoid thinking about painful experiences reflects natural human instincts to escape emotional discomfort, but this avoidance strategy often intensifies problems rather than resolving them. Steven's own admission that he knows what it's like to hurt people by accident hints at his own unprocessed guilt that will become central to the episode's climax. Garnet's intervention with her "hold the phone" declaration marks the episode's shift toward therapeutic intervention and healthy emotional processing. Her expertise as a fusion gives her unique insight into how emotional imbalance affects fusion stability, positioning her as the ideal guide for helping Steven and Connie work through their difficulties. Her decision to bring them to the beach for meditation creates a calm, natural environment conducive to introspection and healing. Garnet's explanation about fusion needing balance provides both practical fusion advice and broader wisdom about emotional health. Her description of how imbalance causes fusions to lose touch with reality and see things that aren't there directly addresses what happened during their training session while establishing the connection between emotional wellness and clear perception. This lesson applies to both fusion and individual mental health. The meditation sequence that transports them into the blue fusion realm creates a visual metaphor for entering a therapeutic headspace where difficult emotions can be safely explored. Garnet's song about flexibility, love, and trust establishes the core principles needed for both successful fusion and healthy emotional processing. The appearance of Ruby and Sapphire demonstrates how even stable relationships require ongoing work to maintain balance. The butterfly metaphor throughout the meditation represents intrusive thoughts and painful memories that can overwhelm someone when left unexamined. Ruby's angry chase of a single butterfly while Sapphire becomes surrounded by swarms illustrates how different people respond to emotional triggers, with some fighting against feelings, while others become paralyzed by them. The visualization shows how both responses can create distance between partners who need to support each other. Garnet's lyrics about thoughts that might alarm you and things that you said are suddenly swarming describe the experience of rumination and guilt spirals that can dominate someone's mental landscape. Her acknowledgement that these thoughts confuse you and threaten to make "I might lose you" validates how overwhelming guilt can feel, while emphasizing the importance of not letting difficult emotions destroy relationships or self-worth. The song's central message that painful thoughts and feelings are okay represents a fundamental shift in how the characters approach emotional distress. Rather than fighting against or avoiding difficult feelings, Garnet teaches them to observe these emotions without judgment while maintaining connection to supportive relationships. The repeated assurance, "I'm here," emphasizes how healing happens through maintained connection rather than isolation. Connie's memory projection shows the actual incident that has been troubling her, revealing that her defensive response was indeed instinctive and unintentional. The visualization of her grabbing the boy's arm and slamming him down demonstrates how quickly trained reflexes can activate in surprise situations. Her immediate shock and flight response shows that she recognized the inappropriateness of her action, indicating intact moral reasoning despite the reflexive violence. The resolution of Connie's portion of the meditation comes when she learns to observe her guilt without being overwhelmed by it. The butterflies flying away peacefully represents achieving emotional regulation, where difficult feelings can be acknowledged without dominating one's entire mental state. This progression models healthy grief and guilt processing, where painful emotions are felt fully but don't become permanent fixtures of one's identity. Steven's breakthrough moment occurs when Connie returns the next day, having successfully apologized to Jeff and even befriended him. Her description of how trying not to think about it just made it worse validates Garnet's teaching about facing difficult emotions directly. Connie's realization that she spent time feeling bad instead of doing something shows her understanding that guilt should motivate constructive action rather than self-punishment. However, Steven's reaction to seeing a butterfly on Rose's sword reveals that his own emotional processing remains incomplete. His worried expression suggests that he has unresolved guilt about his own actions, setting up the episode's second major crisis. The butterfly trigger shows how visual or environmental cues can activate traumatic memories, even when someone believes they have moved past difficult experiences. The return to combat training demonstrates Stevani's improved stability following Connie's emotional resolution, but Steven's unprocessed trauma creates new fusion difficulties. When Stevani begins hallucinating Bismuth, Jasper, and Eyeball, these visions represent Steven's guilt about specific conflicts where he felt forced to hurt others despite wanting to help them. Each figure embodies a different aspect of Steven's moral distress about using violence even in defensive situations. Bismuth's appearance represents Steven's guilt about bubbling someone who trusted him when they disagreed about killing enemies. Jasper's corrupted form symbolizes his feelings of failure about being unable to heal her psychological damage. Eyeball's angry presence reflects his guilt about defending himself against someone who felt betrayed by his mother's actions. Together, these figures represent the accumulated weight of Steven's moral injuries from situations where all available choices involved some form of harm. The climactic appearance of rose quartz, formed from butterflies, represents Steven's deepest fear about disappointing his mother's memory and failing to live up to her peaceful ideals. Rose's disappointed expression in the hallucination reflects Steven's internal critic and his fear that using violence, even in self-defense, makes him unworthy of her legacy. This manifestation shows how grief and inherited trauma can compound personal guilt. Stevani's fall from the arena creates a life-threatening crisis that forces Steven to confront his avoidance of painful emotions. Connie's ability to remain calm while falling demonstrates her improved emotional regulation skills, while Steven's breakdown shows how unprocessed trauma can emerge at the worst possible moments. His curried-up position and covered face illustrate the shame and overwhelm that characterize traumatic stress responses. Connie's therapeutic response to Steven's crisis demonstrates how she has internalized Garnet's lessons about facing difficult emotions. Her validation that it's okay to think about it, and that's okay too, when Steven describes feeling bad, shows her understanding that healing requires experiencing difficult emotions rather than avoiding them. Her insistence that there was nothing else you could have done provides the external perspective Steven needs to begin forgiving himself. The conversation during their fall creates the emotional breakthrough Steven needs to process his guilt and trauma. Connie's statement that you have to be honest about how bad it feels so you can move on articulates the episode's core therapeutic message about the necessity of feeling difficult emotions fully before healing can occur. Her sharing about her own experience provides a model for how this process works in practice. Steven's final fusion into Stevani while falling through the butterfly vortex represents accepting and moving through difficult emotions rather than fighting against them. Their successful landing demonstrates that facing trauma directly, while supported by caring relationships, allows people to survive and recover from experiences that initially felt overwhelming. The peaceful descent shows how mindful awareness can transform panic into calm navigation. The episode's conclusion with Stevani lying on the ground saying, "I'm here," brings the therapeutic journey full circle. This statement represents both presence in the current moment and self-acceptance despite past mistakes. The phrase echoes Garnet's repeated assurance during the meditation, showing how internalized support can become self-compassion. Mindful Education succeeded in presenting genuine therapeutic techniques within an entertaining animated format that made mental health concepts accessible to younger viewers. The episode's integration of fusion training with meditation instruction created a framework where learning about emotional regulation felt like natural character development rather than heavy-handed lesson delivery. The visual metaphors of butterflies and falling made abstract psychological concepts concrete and memorable. The episode's treatment of guilt and trauma processing provided viewers with practical tools for dealing with their own difficult emotions. By showing both avoidance and healthy processing approaches, the story illustrated why facing painful feelings directly, while supported by caring relationships, leads to better outcomes than trying to suppress or ignore emotional distress. The validation that feeling bad about harmful actions is normal and healthy helped normalize the guilt that comes with moral development. Most importantly, mindful education demonstrated that healing from trauma and guilt requires community support and self-compassion rather than isolation and self-punishment. The episode's emphasis on maintaining relationships while processing difficult emotions showed how connection facilitates recovery rather than hindering it. By presenting these concepts through beloved characters facing relatable struggles, the episode made therapeutic wisdom accessible to audiences who might otherwise never encounter these ideas. The episode's lasting impact comes from its practical demonstration that mindfulness and emotional awareness are learnable skills that can transform how people relate to their own psychological experiences. Rather than treating mental health as mysterious or requiring professional intervention exclusively, mindful education showed how basic therapeutic principles can be practiced in daily life with support from friends and mentors who care about one's well-being. Mindful education revolutionized how animated television could address mental health by teaching genuine therapeutic techniques through fusion training. The episode's butterfly metaphor for intrusive thoughts and its demonstration that avoiding difficult emotions makes them worse provided viewers with practical tools for processing guilt and trauma. Stephen and Connie's journey from emotional avoidance to mindful acceptance showed how facing painful feelings with supportive relationships leads to healing rather than breakdown. Moving on to Samurai Jack, Jack and the Haunted House. The Haunted House, when helping others means facing your fears. Sometimes the most haunting episodes come from exploring psychological terror through supernatural metaphors. This Samurai Jack episode used classic horror elements to examine themes of trauma, illusion versus reality, and the courage required to free others from spiritual imprisonment, creating one of the series' most genuinely frightening entries. The episode opens with Jack encountering a sobbing young girl during his solitary travels, immediately establishing an atmosphere of sadness and mystery. The girl's immediate flight upon noticing Jack and her dropped teddy bear creates the classic horror setup of following someone into danger out of compassion. The teddy bear's resemblance to a creature from a previous episode provides subtle continuity, while hinting that this encounter connects to larger supernatural forces. Jack's pursuit leads him to an old Japanese house whose dilapidated condition signals supernatural corruption. His decision to use a side entrance rather than following the girl through the front door shows tactical thinking, but also represents taking a different path into the same dangerous situation. The glimpse of a woman's silhouette by a fire through the door creates false hope for normal human habitation that immediately vanishes when moths swarm past Jack, suggesting that what appears real may be illusion. The house's interior reveals itself as a supernatural trap where reality constantly shifts between past and present. Jack's discovery of various family belongings triggers flashback visions that gradually reveal the tragic history of the home's inhabitants. These objects serve as psychic anchors that allow Jack to piece together what happened while simultaneously drawing him deeper into the house's psychological snare. The model ships that belong to the family's son represent interrupted childhood and dreams cut short by supernatural violence. Each discovered item deepens Jack's connection to the family's fate while triggering more detailed visions of their encounter with the mysterious evil force. These flashbacks function as both exposition and psychological horror, showing Jack glimpses of trauma he cannot yet fully understand or prevent. The episode's horror movie atmosphere emerges through deliberate pacing and sound design that creates genuine dread rather than simple action sequences. The creepy visuals and discomforting sound effects establish that this encounter operates by different rules than Jack's usual battles, where his sword skills and warrior training may prove inadequate against psychological and supernatural threats. Jack's discovery of the girl deeper in the house initially seems like progress toward rescue, but his attempt to leave reveals the house's true nature as a supernatural prison. The disappearance of all doors and windows from rooms they had previously entered demonstrates that the house actively prevents escape rather than simply being abandoned. This transformation from shelter to trap forces Jack to confront that normal solutions will not work. The decision to spend the night inside the house comes from supernatural influence rather than rational choice, as both Jack and the girl feel strangely tired, despite the obvious danger. This fatigue represents the house's power to cloud judgment and override survival instincts, showing how supernatural forces can manipulate even strong-willed individuals into accepting dangerous situations. Jack's nightmarish sleep, filled with visions of the shadowy monster, reveals the true source of the house's corruption while building tension for the eventual confrontation. These dreams function as both psychological torture and gradual revelation, allowing Jack to understand the nature of his enemy while experiencing the terror that destroyed the original family. The nightmares blur the line between sleep and waking consciousness, making Jack question what is real. The girl's disappearance upon Jack's awakening creates a new crisis that draws him deeper into the supernatural trap. The sound of music and sight of a well-lit room behind a doorway represents classic horror misdirection, offering apparent normalcy that masks deeper horror. Jack's movement toward this false haven shows how even experienced warriors can be drawn toward illusions of safety when isolated and confused. The family dinner scene represents the episode's most psychologically disturbing sequence, as Jack encounters the family appearing alive and normal in a perfectly maintained room. This illusion attacks Jack's rationality and compassion by presenting exactly what he hoped to find while being fundamentally wrong. The contrast between this room's perfection and the house's decay signals that supernatural forces are creating false reality to trap him. Jack's angry disbelief and sword drawing represent his warrior instincts, recognizing deception, but the father's calm response and invitation to tea shows how supernatural manipulation can override rational suspicion. The mention of familiar tea creates false connection and nostalgia that distracts Jack from maintaining his guard, demonstrating how personal details can be weaponized against even careful individuals. The family's explanation about dealing with a terrible storm provides surface-level rationalization for the house's condition while avoiding direct lies about their situation. This careful word choice allows the supernatural force to maintain its illusion while technically acknowledging that something destructive occurred. The vague language masks the true nature of the storm that destroyed them. Toby's grotesque transformation during the conversation marks the beginning of the illusion's collapse as the supernatural force loses control over its human puppets. His eye-rolling, foaming, and convulsions reveal the horror of what the family has become while maintaining the pretense of normal conversation. The father's increasingly uncomfortable responses show the strain of maintaining the charade as the possession becomes visible. The eruption of shadowy matter from all family members' mouths represents the supernatural force, revealing its true nature after its deception fails. This transformation, from seemingly normal family to sources of dark supernatural energy, creates genuine horror through the violation of human forms. The room's simultaneous decay back to its ruined state shows how completely the illusion had masked reality. The accumulation of shadowy matter into a demonic beast provides Jack with a concrete enemy to fight after the psychological manipulation and illusion. However, the monster's use of floor tentacles to seize Jack shows that even direct confrontation operates by supernatural rules rather than normal combat. This physical capture leads to the episode's most surreal sequence as Jack's consciousness is transported to an alternate reality. The alternate dimension where Jack encounters the bound family members represents the psychological realm where the true battle must occur. The absence of normal environment focuses attention on the spiritual conflict between the monster and its victims. The family's bondage visualizes their mental captivity, while their bodies are used by the supernatural force, creating a clear metaphor for psychological possession and trauma. Jack's ability to levitate his sword through tremendous willpower demonstrates that spiritual battles require different weapons than physical combat. His liberation from his own bonds and subsequent fight against the monster shows that defeating supernatural evil requires internal strength and determination rather than external technique. This victory represents triumph of spiritual fortitude over psychological manipulation. The return to reality after the monster's defeat brings immediate relief as the nightmare environment transforms back to normal. Jack's belief that he failed to save the family creates a final moment of tragedy before the revelation that they survived. This emotional roller coaster from despair to joy emphasizes the episode's themes about the difficulty of distinguishing between spiritual success and failure. The family's reunion provides emotional catharsis while validating Jack's heroic journey through psychological and supernatural horror. Their survival proves that his spiritual battle had real consequences for others' well-being, not just his own safety. The father's call to his daughter and their group embrace create a tableau of restored family bonds that the supernatural force had corrupted. Jack's departure from the reunited family maintains his character's solitary nature while providing closure to the supernatural encounter. His continuation with his quest shows that this episode represents one challenge among many in his larger journey, but the experience has deepened his understanding of how evil can manifest through psychological manipulation and illusion. This episode succeeds in creating genuine psychological horror within the Samurai Jack framework by focusing on supernatural themes that transcend simple action sequences. The exploration of illusion versus reality, the corruption of family bonds, and the challenge of fighting enemies that attack through deception rather than direct force expanded the series' thematic range while maintaining its core focus on Jack's heroic journey. The lasting impact comes from the episode's demonstration that some battles require spiritual courage rather than physical skill, and that helping others sometimes means confronting psychological horrors that challenge one's perception of reality. The supernatural elements serve as metaphors for real psychological trauma and the difficulty of distinguishing between authentic and manipulated experiences, making the horror feel grounded despite its fantastical elements. The Haunted House terrified viewers by using supernatural horror to explore psychological manipulation and spiritual imprisonment. Jack's encounter with a demonic force that trapped a family through illusions and possessed their bodies demonstrated how some battles require spiritual courage rather than physical skill. The episode's focus on distinguishing reality from deception while fighting to free others from psychological captivity created genuine horror within the Samurai Jack framework. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Ed and Eddie, If It Smells Like an Ed. If It Smells Like an Ed, when revenge comes full circle. Sometimes, the most satisfying episodes come from watching the underdog execute perfect revenge. If It Smells Like an Ed delivered one of Ed and Eddie's most elaborate plots by transforming Jimmy from helpless victim into masterful manipulator, creating a mystery that kept viewers guessing while exploring themes of bullying, justice, and the consequences of thoughtless cruelty. The episode opens on Friendship Day in the cul-de-sac, where Jimmy, Sarah, Johnny, Plank, and Rolf have constructed a giant heart to celebrate their bonds. The group's spirited performance of "Friends Are There to Help You" establishes the positive atmosphere that will soon be destroyed. When Naz and Kevin arrive, with Naz delighted by the display and Kevin trying to maintain his tough image, the scene captures the different ways characters approach expressions of sentiment and vulnerability. Jimmy's suggestion that everyone sing together demonstrates his role as the cul-de-sac's emotional center, someone who genuinely wants harmony among his friends. His innocent enthusiasm for friendship activities positions him as the least likely character to orchestrate elaborate revenge schemes, making his eventual revelation all the more shocking. The song itself represents the community bonds that the Eds will inadvertently threaten through their thoughtless behavior. The Eds' arrival immediately disrupts the celebration, starting with Ed's accidental interference with the group's groove. While Ed's disruption appears innocent, Eddie's deliberate theft of Rolf's jujubes and mockery of the heart shows his casual disregard for others' efforts and feelings. Ed's compliments about the heart's size and color reveal his genuine appreciation, suggesting that not all the Eds intended to cause problems. Jimmy's advice for Eddie to cheer up and reach out and touch someone demonstrates his continued attempts to maintain positivity despite growing tension. However, Eddie's interpretation of this advice as an opportunity for a prank shows his fundamental inability to engage sincerely with others' emotional needs. The wedgie he gives Jimmy becomes the catalyst for everything that follows, transforming Jimmy's goodwill into humiliation and rage. The other kids' laughter at Jimmy's misery reveals the casual cruelty that often accompanies group dynamics, where even normally kind characters can find humor in someone else's pain. Sarah's immediate threat to tell Mom on Ed shows her protective instincts toward Jimmy, while also demonstrating the power dynamics that govern the cul-de-sac. Ed's fear of parental consequences forces the Eds to flee, but the damage has already been done. The discovery of the missing paintbrush marks the beginning of Jimmy's frame-up plan, though this remains hidden from both the Eds and viewers initially. Sarah's immediate assumption that Ed stole the brush establishes the pattern of blame that will follow throughout the episode. When Johnny discovers that Plank's mouth has been wiped off, the vandalism appears random, but actually represents calculated psychological warfare against the Eds. The blue-stained rag in Ed's back pocket provides the first piece of planted evidence, turning the other kids against him despite his protests of innocence. This moment demonstrates how circumstantial evidence can override character testimony, as Ed's general trustworthiness means nothing when physical proof suggests his guilt. The kids' willingness to believe the evidence over Ed's word shows how quickly group dynamics can turn against individuals. Eddie's hockey stick piercing the giant heart provides the most dramatic evidence of the Eds' apparent guilt. The stick bearing Eddie's name creates seemingly irrefutable proof of his vandalism, though his accusation that Kevin planted it shows his awareness that they're being set up. Kevin's athletic background makes him a logical suspect for hockey-related vandalism, but the kids' anger at Eddie's accusation reveals their bias against the Eds. The Eds' investigation begins with Ed's methodical approach to identifying suspects, showing his logical mind at work, even when confused and overwhelmed. His notepad listing possible culprits demonstrates proper detective methodology, while Eddie's paranoid interpretations reveal his understanding of how much the other kids dislike them. The discussion of each suspect's potential motives provides insight into the cul-de-sac's complex relationship dynamics. Ed's discovery of the red footprint represents a genuine breakthrough in detective work, though his conclusion that the culprit was a foot shows his literal-minded interpretation of evidence. His deduction about the perpetrator's positioning demonstrates surprising analytical ability, suggesting that Ed possesses intelligence that his usual behavior masks. Ed's appreciation for this reasoning validates Ed's contribution while maintaining hope for solving the mystery. The shoe size investigation sequence provides comic relief while advancing the plot through systematic elimination of suspects. Kevin's unconsciousness via fence post shows Eddie's impatience with subtle approaches, while his lack of matching footprint clears him of suspicion. Sarah's reaction to Ed's annoyance with the broken doll demonstrates her predictable anger response, but her shoe size also fails to match the evidence. The attempt to measure Naz's feet while she bounces on the trampoline creates physical comedy while showing Ed's desperation to solve the case. Ed's direct approach of grabbing her feet and forcing them onto the cement block shows his problem-solving through brute force. The failure of this test maintains the mystery while eliminating another suspect from consideration. Rolf's mysterious behavior when the Eds spot him adds intrigue to the investigation without revealing his true role as Jimmy's accomplice. His calm entry into the lane, followed by his complete disappearance when Eddie gives chase, suggests supernatural abilities or exceptional hiding skills. The revelation that he's watching them through a knothole in the fence shows his active surveillance of their investigation. Jimmy's garage scene provides the episode's most misleading moment, as his hockey practice appears to confirm his guilt while actually serving as misdirection. The hockey stick matching the one found in the heart creates false evidence of Jimmy's involvement, but his emotional breakdown about his father's demands reveals genuine distress. Ed's sympathetic response and the subsequent accident with the cement block show how compassion can literally be painful. The discovery of Johnny bound and gagged with jujubes represents the frame-up's escalation from property damage to apparent assault. The giant Johnny Chew message demonstrates the perpetrator's cruel sense of humor while creating another crime to blame on the Eds. The matching footprint on Plank's back provides crucial evidence while making Johnny appear to be another victim rather than a witness. The other kids' discovery of the Eds in this compromising position perfectly times the frame-up's culmination. Their immediate assumption of the Eds' guilt shows how the planted evidence has poisoned everyone's perception of them. The chase sequence that follows demonstrates the complete breakdown of the Eds' relationships with their neighbors, forcing them into fugitive status. The Jujube Trail represents Jimmy's final trap, leading the Eds directly into danger while appearing to offer investigative progress. Ed's focus on following clues with his magnifying glass shows his continued faith in logical investigation, while Ed's consumption of the evidence demonstrates his priorities. The trail's end at the abandoned shack creates the perfect location for the episode's climactic revelation. The Kanker sisters' appearance in the shack reveals Jimmy's most impressive accomplishment, convincing the cul-de-sac's most dangerous residents to participate in his revenge scheme. Their presence creates immediate terror for the Eds, while showing Jimmy's unexpected ability to negotiate with hostile forces. The choice between facing the kids or the Kankers presents the Eds with an impossible decision between different forms of punishment. The fruit-throwing punishment that follows represents community justice in action, with the Eds accepting their fate despite their innocence. This scene shows how false accusations can lead to real consequences, as the Eds suffer physical discomfort for crimes they didn't commit. The other kids' participation in this punishment reveals their collective anger and desire for retribution. Jimmy's revelation as the mastermind transforms the entire episode through dramatic irony, as viewers realize they've witnessed an elaborate revenge plot rather than a simple mystery. His detailed explanation of each step in the frame-up demonstrates remarkable planning and execution abilities that completely contradict his usual helpless persona. The Wedgie's role as motivation shows how seemingly minor acts of cruelty can trigger major consequences. The flashback sequence revealing Jimmy's methods provides satisfying closure while showcasing his impressive deception skills. His sacrifice of shoulder padding to wipe off Plank's mouth shows his willingness to use his own belongings as evidence. The recruitment of Rolf as an accomplice demonstrates his ability to manipulate others into supporting his agenda, while his negotiation with the Kankers reveals diplomatic skills no one suspected. Eddie's anger at the revelation contrasts with Ed's grudging admiration for Jimmy's methodology, showing different responses to being outmaneuvered. Jimmy's snap summoning the Kankers demonstrates his continued control over the situation even after revealing his guilt. His satisfied laughter as the Eds are dragged away shows the completion of his revenge, though his slip on the banana peel provides immediate karma for his actions. If It Smells Like an Ed succeeded in completely subverting viewer expectations by transforming the cul-de-sac's most innocent character into its most effective schemer. The episode's mystery structure kept audiences guessing while building toward a revelation that recontextualized every previous event. Jimmy's transformation from victim to mastermind provided one of the series' most shocking character developments while exploring themes about the hidden depths within seemingly simple people. The episode's lasting impact comes from its demonstration that anyone can be capable of elaborate revenge when pushed too far, and that actions have consequences even when they seem minor. The sophisticated plotting required to frame the Eds showed Jimmy's intelligence and planning abilities while proving that underestimating someone based on their usual behavior can be a serious mistake. Most importantly, the episode validated victims of bullying by showing that they don't have to remain powerless, while also demonstrating that revenge often creates more problems than it solves. Jimmy's ultimate success in punishing the Eds came at the cost of revealing his deceptive nature, permanently changing how others viewed him and proving that victory through manipulation carries its own price. If It Smells Like an Ed shocked viewers by revealing Jimmy as the mastermind behind an elaborate frame-up scheme targeting the Eds, his transformation from helpless victim to calculating manipulator demonstrated how seemingly minor acts of cruelty can trigger major consequences, while his recruitment of Rolf and the Kanker sisters showed unexpected diplomatic and planning abilities. The episode's mystery structure kept audiences guessing until the dramatic revelation that completely subverted expectations about the cul-de-sac's most innocent character. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to A Fistful of Ed. A Fistful of Ed, when accidents create dangerous reputations. Sometimes, the most cautionary episodes come from exploring how misunderstandings can spiral completely out of control. A Fistful of Ed examined themes of mistaken identity, social perception, and the corruption that comes with unearned power, creating one of the series' most psychologically complex stories about how reputation can override reality. The episode opens with the Happy Cluckers Club meeting in session, where Ed serves as the responsible leader overseeing egg incubation projects. His thorough examination of Johnny's egg and encouraging assessment demonstrates his natural teaching abilities and genuine care for his peers' success. Ed's toy robot egg provides comic relief while showing his playful nature, earning mild disapproval from Sarah but acceptance from Ed. The Kanker sisters' violent entrance transforms the peaceful club meeting into chaos as they arrive with cooking implements, ready to consume the carefully tended eggs. Their bibs and various cooking tools show premeditated destruction of the children's hard work, representing the kind of mindless vandalism that threatens educational pursuits. The club members' panicked search for hiding places demonstrates their justified fear of the Kankers' destructive capabilities. Ed's attempt to redirect the Kankers with educational literature about egg hatchery represents his belief that knowledge and reason can overcome ignorance and aggression. His offering of an immense booklet shows his faith in education as a solution to conflict, though his nervous demeanor suggests he understands this approach may not work with the Kankers. The accidental dropping of the heavy book onto Lee's foot creates the first misunderstanding that will define the entire episode. Ed's immediate apology and explanation that it was an accident demonstrates his genuine remorse and peaceful nature. However, Lee's screaming pain and Marie's assumption of deliberate violence establishes the narrative that will follow Ed throughout the school. The other club members' amazed stares at Ed after the Kankers leave shows how quickly perception can shift based on single dramatic events. Their reaction suggests that they view Ed's accidental success in driving away the Kankers as evidence of hidden toughness rather than simple misfortune. This moment marks the beginning of Ed's unwanted transformation from gentle scholar to feared tough guy. Naz's retelling of the incident to Kevin demonstrates how stories grow in the telling, with Lee's injury becoming increasingly exaggerated. Her claim about using a whole refrigerator of ice just to stop the big toe from ballooning shows how secondhand accounts often amplify details for dramatic effect. Kevin's skeptical laughter about the deadly art of algebra reveals his inability to imagine Ed as physically threatening. Eddie's discovery that Ed has allegedly sent the Kankers packing represents his first glimpse of potential power and status through association with a feared reputation. His mocking question about the deadly art of allergies shows his initial disbelief. But Ed's frightened confirmation that "I was there" begins to convince him that something significant has changed about their social standing. The incident with Rolf requesting a pencil creates the second major misunderstanding when Ed's helpful response leads to accidental violence. The liquid white spill that causes Ed to slip demonstrates how environmental hazards can turn innocent interactions into apparent attacks. The chain reaction of his foot hitting Rolf's chin, then his head, followed by the shower of pencils, creates a sequence that looks deliberately brutal despite being entirely accidental. Rolf's pained comment that he would have taken a simple "no, not today" shows how the perceived attack seems disproportionate to his modest request. The other students' shocked reactions, particularly Nads's observation that "it's always the quiet ones," reveals how Ed's gentle reputation makes his apparent violence more shocking and memorable than similar actions from known troublemakers. The escalating fear among the students, with Jimmy and Sarah declaring they didn't see anything and Johnny warning that Double D's cracked, demonstrates how quickly social dynamics can shift when someone's perceived nature changes. Dramatically, their flight from the scene shows that Ed's reputation for violence has already spread beyond those who witnessed the events directly. Eddie's jubilant celebration of Ed's apparent transformation into an animal reveals his excitement about the power and respect that comes with having a feared enforcer as a friend. His enthusiastic recounting of the violence with sound effects shows how he romanticizes aggression as a path to social dominance. Ed's horrified reaction and poetic description of Ed falling down the deep dark crack between the couch pillows of life demonstrates his understanding that this change threatens their friendship. The lunchroom scene showcases how Eddie's unearned reputation grants Eddie unprecedented power to bully other students without consequence. Eddie's transformation with the leather jacket and spiked hair represents his adoption of a tough guy persona to match his new status. His casual violence toward Johnny, Sarah, and Jimmy demonstrates how quickly he becomes corrupted by the protection Ed's reputation provides. The other students' immediate abandonment of their lunch table when Ed sits down shows how fear has replaced their previous friendly interactions with him. Their cowering behavior and reluctant acceptance of Eddie's bullying reveals how Ed's perceived dangerousness has made him a social pariah despite his unchanged, gentle nature. Ed's decision to sit far away from Ed demonstrates how even close friendships can be damaged by fear and misunderstanding. The pie dispute between Marie and Johnny creates the third accidental violence when Ed's attempt at peaceful mediation results in apparent brutality. His intention to share his mother's apple crumble pie shows his continued desire to resolve conflicts through kindness and generosity. However, his accidental finger stabbing on the fork creates the reflexive motion that launches Johnny through the wall. The escalating panic among the students as they witness each violent act reinforces their growing belief that Ed has become a dangerous enforcer. Their collective retreat to cower in the corner while Eddie celebrates shows how fear can override rational assessment of evidence. Jimmy's desperate offering of money, personal items, and moisturizing lotions demonstrates the extreme lengths people will go to appease someone they perceive as threatening. Ed's heartbroken decision to protect Sarah from his former best friend represents the most tragic consequence of the misunderstandings. His declaration that "we are friends no more" and his mother's prohibition against associating with a fighting fisticuffs shows how family pressure and social fear can destroy even the strongest bonds. The physical breakdown of both Ed and Ed as their friendship dissolves demonstrates the emotional cost of false accusations. The cafeteria fight between Ed and Ed, while appearing violent to observers, actually consists of Ed's panicked flight and Ed's desperate attempts to restore their friendship. The destruction that results from Ed's terrified running creates more evidence of Ed's apparent dangerousness while masking the true nature of their interaction. The other students' continued fear and flight shows how each incident reinforces their preconceptions. Ed's anguished self-reflection about becoming a lowly thug and examining his shaking arms reveals his horror at his transformed reputation and its effects on his relationships. His genuine distress at being perceived as violent demonstrates that the social consequences of false accusations can be as damaging to the accused as to their alleged victims. Jimmy's discovery of Ed tending flowers in the greenhouse provides the episode's turning point as it reveals Ed's true gentle nature through his horticultural skills. The cross-pollination of a rose with a baby blue gym sock requires the delicate touch that Jimmy recognizes as incompatible with thuggish behavior. His realization that only hands as gentle as hummingbirds' wings could have spliced the two together shows how evidence of someone's true character can overcome false narratives. The therapy session where Ed recounts his version of events provides viewers with the truth behind each apparent attack. His detailed explanations of the liquid white spill, the fork accident, and his attempt to remove the chair separating him from Ed show how innocent actions can be misinterpreted when viewed through the lens of fear and expectation. Jimmy's diagnosis that Ed has been marked with a scarlet letter references Hawthorne's classic novel about social ostracism based on perceived moral failings. His plan to validate that sweet and gentle you through a staged fight demonstrates understanding that public redemption requires public demonstration of true character. The challenge scene where Jimmy slaps Ed with a glove and invokes the Marquis of Queensberry rules creates a formal framework for Ed to prove his peaceful nature. The theatrical nature of their interaction, with Jimmy's deliberate staging and Kevin's spreading of the news, shows how social narratives can be consciously constructed and manipulated. The pit fight sequence reveals the difference between Ed's perceived toughness and his actual pacifist nature when faced with real conflict. His reluctance to engage in violence, even when challenged directly, demonstrates that his reputation was entirely unearned. The crowd's expectation of brutality contrasts sharply with the reality of Ed's gentle character. Jimmy's eventual explosion of rage, triggered by Eddie's condescending food throwing, shows how even the meekest person can be driven to violence when pushed too far. His transformation into a mad dog and his thorough defeat of Ed demonstrates that actual fighting ability has little connection to reputation or appearance. The reversal of their positions, with Jimmy becoming the victor and Ed the defeated, completes the episode's exploration of how perceptions can be utterly wrong. The aftermath, with Jimmy being celebrated as a hero while Ed lies beaten and bruised, shows how quickly social narratives can shift when new evidence emerges. Kevin's theft of Eddie's leather jacket represents the transfer of perceived power from the defeated to the victorious, while the crowd's trampling of Eddie demonstrates how quickly former associates can be abandoned when their protection disappears. A Fistful of Ed succeeded in creating a sophisticated examination of how reputation, fear, and social dynamics can create false narratives that damage innocent people while corrupting those who benefit from them. The episode's exploration of how accidents can be misinterpreted as aggression provided a cautionary tale about the dangers of jumping to conclusions based on limited evidence. The episode's lasting impact comes from its demonstration that gentleness and intelligence are often more valuable than perceived toughness, and that true character eventually reveals itself despite temporary misunderstandings. Ed's ultimate vindication through his horticultural skills and his peaceful response to Jimmy's challenge showed that authentic nature cannot be permanently obscured by false reputation. Most importantly, the episode illustrated how social fear and the desire for protection can lead people to enable bullying and corruption, while also showing that redemption is possible when truth is allowed to emerge through honest demonstration of character. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe and I'll see you in the next video.